Good evening, everybody. You may be seated. Thank you. So, it's a big welcome to the two members on the 28th of June for the 2023 Council meeting. Can I ask members, when speaking, to speak directly into the microphone? This will enable members and members of the public to hear. Can I also remind members to place their mobile phones to silent? Can I also ask members to stand where possible when speaking? I would like to remind everyone present that this meeting is being live streamed this evening and will be available on the Council's website. I would now like to ask Reverend Canon Darren Barlow to lead us in prayer. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. We've recently been experiencing a mini heat wave with temperatures in Thurrock around the high 20s or even in the 30 plus. I'm both pleased and surprised that the temperature in the chamber this evening feels a little cooler and calmer than of late. And all this fine weather ideally suits outdoor community events that take place around this time of the year. Last Thursday, a number of us gathered to give thanks and to celebrate the 75th anniversary of the arrival of the Empire Windrush at Tilbury. A wonderful event with many local people plus those from further afield who shared in that special day. And during this month of June, many different schools, community organisations and places of worship hold events seeking to engage with and know better their local community. I'd encourage you as members, if you're invited to something within your ward, to make every effort to attend. And during this coming weekend, there will be a number of different events linked to the Great Get Together initiative. Here in the middle of Grays at the parish church just behind me, we'll be holding a community afternoon on Saturday when we too will seek to serve, reach out and get to know better our local community. The Great Get Together initiative seeks to carry forward and honour the words said in Parliament by the late Jo Cox MP. She said, we are far more united and have far more in common than that which divides us. And for me, those words not only summarise the Great Get Together and all community events, but also the wonderful day last Thursday in and around the docks and the old Tilbury Riverside railway station. This community of Thurrock, of which you all represent this evening, has much to celebrate and to unite around. And perhaps these two words of celebrate and unite might be themes to hold before us as we journey through this evening's agenda. And quoting Jo Cox, whilst there will be things that divide you, there are also many things on which you agree. And I'd encourage you tonight to focus on those. And so a prayer. We pray for our community of Thurrock, for all who live, work and learn here. We proudly remember our borough motto of by Thames to all peoples of the world. We pray for industry and commerce, and especially the port of Tilbury, as it continues to play such a significant role within Thurrock and beyond. We pray for the work of Thurrock Council, its members and officers, our local schools, places of worship, and all who form and shape our local communities. May we together strive to show acceptance, humility, and respect for all whom we meet. Amen.
Thank you, Reverend Barlow. I would now like to take this opportunity to have my consort, Councillor Brian Little. No, he's not a councillor. God, I'd nearly got Councillor Byrne muddled up again or whatever. Brian Little, my consul, with his consul chains. So, Brian, would you please step forward to receive your chains? Thank you. I don't usually say, and he doesn't like me actually saying anything about him, but he has been absolutely brilliant. Handbag carrying, keeping me on time, driving me here, there and everywhere, and doing a Costco's run this morning, etc. So, and driving him mad. So, yeah, thank you. Right, the first item, number 2, well, actually I'm still on item 1 really, because I'm mindful that members tonight will be keen to share their views and feedback on tonight's agenda. And I'm going to ask members to observe the Council's adopted Code of Conduct for councillors, which is expected of them all. And I can imagine this is a really emotive report. And therefore, I've decided that rather than the usual amount of time of probably 15 minutes for a report, I've taken it upon myself as Mayor to say that I'm probably going to give this half an hour because I do want everyone's voice heard. I don't want repetitiveness. I don't want people's names mentioned, as I've said before, but I do want you all to have a view and be part of the process. So I'm hoping that's okay with you. Well, I've done it anyway, so yes, thank you. I only have received one apology, and that was from Councillor Rob Gedhill. Councillor Jeffries, have you any apologies to make?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Just that Councillor Polly could be, well, she is slightly running late.
Yeah, thank you. Councillor Kent, have you any apologies from your side? No. Councillor Spate, you're here.
For the second meeting running, we have abandoned our tribute to the World War II Memorial and to your own Roll of Honour people. How can we just forget what these people in World War II did for us?
Councillor Spate, if you would look further down, I actually have got it and I will be coming to it. But tonight, yeah, I have got it all written down. And I know I've taken things slightly out of order, but I wanted you all to know that you're going to be here for a long time tonight to discuss a really important agenda. I haven't agreed to, well, no. Do we accept these minutes as being approved? Agreed. Item 4, I have not agreed to any urgent items of business. Item 5, are there any declarations of interest to be made? No? Right. Any announcements on behalf of the Leader of the Council? Thank you. Councillor Jeffrey.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. June is a busy month for recognising good causes, good work and celebrating the role the borough and our residents have played and continue to play in life and community in the borough and far beyond. Last week, the Deputy Mayor, Councillor Bass, joined dignitaries including the Lord Lieutenant of Essex and our MP, Jackie Doyle-Price, at a ceremony to unveil a plaque celebrating the 75th anniversary of the arrival of HMT Empire Windrush in Tilbury. I'm sure, like me, you are proud of the role our borough played in the arrival of the Windrush generation and the huge contribution that you have made to life in the UK. We also held a ceremony to raise a flag for the Armed Forces Day on Monday the 19th of June to celebrate all who served or who are currently serving in the Army, Navy and Air Force. We're also flying the Pride flag as we mark Pride Month here in Thurrock. And during the first week of June, we celebrated the tremendous contribution of the borough's volunteers as part of the Volunteers Week. I'm pleased to say that our tree team has also been busy during this planting season with over 265 trees planted in Thurrock between last September and this May. Residents can help, if I could ask them, to help these saplings take root and flourish during the hot summer months by watering any planted near their home. They just need a little help until they're established, and pouring washing up water or a bucket of bath water on them will really help. And finally, can I thank councillors in the chamber here who have taken up my request to deliver the fostering leaflet in their wards. We are already seeing the interest from residents as a result of these leaflets, and there are still more to be delivered, so if anyone can volunteer, please speak to the fostering team.
Thank you. I would now like to take a moment and remember Thurrock's fallen of World War II on page 7 of your agendas. The names are as follows: Arthur Farraway, Henry Brandon, Frederick Thomas Adams, George Game, John Coventry, and John Easton. Thank you. Item number 7, questions from members of the public. I will now take the questions from the public. One question has been submitted and accepted by the monitoring officer. This is set out on page 21 of the agenda. For the benefit of the recording of this meeting, I would ask that the questioner read out their question when asked to do so. I would also inform the questioner that any supplementary questions that they may have, and it doesn't seem to be as though he's here, is he not? Ah, that's a great shame. I didn't see that. Okay, perhaps Mr. Mays is held up in traffic. Petitions from members of the public and councillors. Please be advised that in accordance with the councillors' petitions scheme, 2 notices of petition have been received. Can I first ask Councillor Kelly to present his petition, and can I ask that you hand your petition to a member of the Democratic Services? Councillor Kelly, would you like to speak?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. We, the undersigned, call on Angular Water and the relevant owners to fully crown and maintain the trees on their land at the rear of Fredericks Andrews Court and Silverlock Road. This will enable the residents to fully enjoy the sun from the south-facing aspects, as Frederick Andrews Court is mainly south-facing of their properties, and help prolong the life of these trees and allay the safety concerns of residents. It's a real issue this time of year. It's almost darkness throughout the day. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Jeffries, the portfolio holder, do you want to acknowledge or say anything? Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and thank you, Councillor Kelly, for your petition. I will be writing to officers asking them to look into this as a matter of urgency and to use whatever powers are at our disposal to ensure that these trees will be treated.
Thank you. Moving on to our second petitioner, can I ask Councillor Cecil to present his petition? Can I ask that you hand your petition to the members of Democratic Services? Thank you, Councillor.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. This petition has been signed by 1,675 plus and counting people from East Thurrock and the wider borough. We urgently appeal to Lloyds to stop the closure of the only bank in East Thurrock, which is Lloyds in Corringham Town Centre. The customers, residents, shopkeepers and business owners rate highly the Lloyds Bank in Corringham Town Centre. They value immensely the work they do and do not want to go to mobile or phone banking readily. The help they receive in the bank is immense. To be able to explain to customers what it is that they're struggling with is immense again. It's not only the elderly who need the branch. Not everyone is capable or wants to get on with the internet banking. But also struggling business owners have announced that they value entirely the bank branch. Accenture Research has stated over 44% of over 55s would rather go to a bank. Even 18 to 34 year olds, 40% I'll just check that. No, a fifth, it's only 20%, a fifth. 20% of 18 to 34 year olds would rather go to a bank in person. That's quite a surprise. Oh, quick, oh yeah. The elderly have access issues, and the ones with mobility issues have problems with buses. The closure of the post office in Corringham Town Centre didn't help because the services they provided were very much matched by Lloyd's. And as I say, people were very, very keen to have them. The single counter in Cost Cutters in Stamford, the staff there are magnificent, but it's only one counter.
Councillor
It works
Cecil.
through the... Beg your pardon?
Sorry, Councillor Cecil, I think you're running out of time.
Okay.
Okay, so if you'd like to just present your...
Yeah, I just want to make something about the 4 schools who have counts there. They are very greatly inconvenienced by the closure of a bank. They were urged to go academy, and their help is badly needed.
Right, thank you, Councillor
This closure will be devastating, and we urge Lloyds to investigate and rethink. Thank you, Madam.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Jeffreys.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and thank you, Councillor Cecil, for your petition. Lloyds Bank, like many of our high street banks, have been closing branches, citing transition to digital banking and advising the availability of services through the post office. However, with the closure of the Corringham Post Office, I know that this is not possible. So I too am concerned, as he is, that many vulnerable residents, including the elderly, who do not have access to digital banking, will now not have access to a post office or a bank. Therefore, I will be writing to the Chief Executive Lloyds Group, expressing my concern, along with this Chamber's, and his residents, about the closure of this bank, and we'll let him know of the outcome.
Thank you, Councillor Jeffreys. Item 9, update report in
Madam
respect...
Mayor, can I ask why my petition wasn't put through? I know it's slamming officers, but
Sorry, Councillor Byrne.
a petition, I had one put through and it was totally ignored just because, probably because I'm slamming officers. So
I haven't received that petition, so I'm sorry, Councillor Byrne, I hadn't received that petition or notice of it. But well, Councillor Byrne, you should have... Hang on, Councillor Byrne. I'm speaking. If you can make sure in future, when you have these petitions, they are important to residents, and that you do get them to the monitoring officer on time so they can be included. Thank you. There must be some... Councillor Byrne. Perhaps it is, but we will talk about this after, you and I. Update, I don't think I have. Update report in respect of those... He is, isn't he? Right. Update report in respect of those petitions presented at Council and Council officers. This report can be found on page 23 of the agenda and is information on the status of petitions handed in at the Council meeting and the Council officers. Nothing? No one wants to speak. Appointment, item 10, appointments to committees and outside bodies, statutory and other panels. Councillor Jeffreys, do you wish to make any changes to your appointments previously made? Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. To remove Councillor Snell from extreme and hidden harms and replace with Councillor Anderson. To remove Councillor Pearce from corporate overview and scrutiny and replace with Councillor Polly. To remove Councillor Salmons from corporate parenting and replace with Councillor Carter. To remove Councillor Spillman from housing overview and scrutiny and replace with Councillor Pearce. Councillor Redsill is to be the Council's representative on Impulse Leisure, and to remove Councillor Abbas from the Constitutional Working Group and replace with Councillor Arnold. And finally, to add Councillor Carter as a substitute to the Planning Committee.
My goodness, that was a turnaround. Right, Councillor Kent. Councillor Massey, spokesman for the independent members. Do you wish to make any changes?
No, thank you, Madam Mayor. The non-aligned independents have no changes to make.
Thank you, Councillor Massey. Right. Do we have any members that have a point
Sorry,
of
Madam
view?
Mayor, we haven't got a spokesman. We're 4 individuals. What's going on here?
You've just broke some news to the four of us. I'm not aware that we have a spokesperson for the independent councillors.
You've made that decision, not us.
Where's that come from?
Where did that come from?
I only asked the
Councillor Spate, I have questioned this before with the monitoring officer, and if you remember the last meeting, I did keep saying the independence, which didn't sound right, and it was agreed. The monitoring officer said that the spokesman was for the group was Councillor Massey. So, all right, Gary, oh sorry, Councillor Byrne, do you want to make any changes?
Yes, I want to say that he's not a spokesman. All 4 of us are individuals. That's what we got voted in. We don't want to be in a party. We haven't got a spokesman. There's 1, 2, 3, 4. Next election, probably 20 of us having a say. Come on.
Right, point taken. Councillor Allen, do you want to make any changes?
Other than I'd just like to be my own spokesperson. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Allen. Councillor Spate, would you like to change anything?
I will be making a statement on item 14. Thank you.
Sorry, I didn't get. Is any member in a disagreement with any of the nominations made? And that's any member and each individual indie. Item 11, the Overview and Scrutiny Annual Report, to be found on page 25 for the period 2022 to 2023. Would each ONS chair like to give a very brief introduction to their report? Thank you. So, Councillor Morriscock, yes?
Oh, perfect. I would have liked to have spoken on this, but actually I wasn't the chair for last year, so I didn't actually think it was appropriate that I spoke on it, because it's not my report.
Thank you. Any other members, portfolio holders? Councillor Maldoni. Thank you.
I wasn't a chair or a vice chair last year, but I would like to speak on this, if I may, Madam Mayor.
Yes, if you could get a little closer to the mic, because it's difficult to hear you, and I know it's...
It'd be easier if I was sitting down, but you
Okay.
did specifically ask me to stand up, so I'll do my best.
Thank you, Councillor.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Thank you for the report. The BVI report clearly states that inspectors found that scrutiny at the council is ineffective. The principal issues highlighted included capacity not being used effectively, member training being inadequate, and the executive and some senior officers not appearing to value or understand the role of scrutiny, and that scrutiny is to a significant extent ignored by the Tory cabinet. As a result, the BVI concludes that this important mechanism for ensuring accountability within the council has been eroded under Tory leadership. In light of the serious failures highlighted in the BVI, which contribute to the current dire financial position of the council, it is more than disappointing to see no acknowledgement of the flaws and problems with scrutiny highlighted in this annual overview and scrutiny report. Instead, the report has the usual self-congratulatory tone and highlights what is presented throughout as scrutiny successes. I just want to bring some attention to the report from the Cleaner, Greener and Safer Overview and Scrutiny Committee, last year of which I was a member. We can see that the Conservative Chair reports that the committee scrutinised a report on waste services brought to the committee in January 2023. I think that there's wide agreement between most of the members on the council that last year the council was particularly bad in serving local residents when it came to bin collections and had not operated a consistent collection service for a considerable amount of time. Nevertheless, it took numerous requests by myself throughout the year for a written waste report to come to scrutiny, which, although minuted at meetings, were ignored. Outside of meetings, I wrote to the chair of that committee to ask for her support to bring this important report to committee. I was ignored. In the end, I had to write to the government inspectors to ask for their help. If I had not done this, I have no doubt that my requests would have continued to be ignored and that no report on this important matter, which was of great concern to our local residents, would have ever come to scrutiny. So thank you, Madam Mayor, for allowing me to highlight that, and I hope that next year's report will show changes to the scrutiny function, which will make it effective as the accountability to the executive moving forward.
Thank you, Councillor Mandoni. Councillor Redsall, Chair of Arena and...
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I think Councillor Modoni, I don't know whether she was talking about me or what, but I don't remember receiving a letter from her from Cleaning and Greening, but as she was talking about Cleaning and Greening, I presumed it was me. As I was the chair last year, we did an awful lot of good work on single plastics and bringing that to within the council, and we realised that schools and businesses have to be involved as well as the council. It's not just doing things within the, the position we're in, but it needs to be further out. We need to get to businesses who are using plastic, and we need also to get to schools to use theirs. Scrutiny, we did scrutinise the waste service, and hopefully that's come to fruition. The brown bin will be back being used next, I think it's this week, is the brown bin. And we did an awful lot of good work, and the officers, in getting it restored, we realised that the problems with the waste was sometimes not enough drivers, not enough things, but a lot of things were mixed up with that. So I think we've realised that residents matter, and as I'm a resident, we all need our brown bin collected. So I think we've come to the right decision, which was obviously taken to Cabinet, and that decision was the brown bins reinstated and back in play. We also raised concerns about the new bin that is coming out, the waste bin, which is going to be placed on top of the bin. Our only worry was whether that bin was going to stay with the big bin or get put down somewhere else and get lost. So there will be a trial coming out, and I can't wait for that trial just to see how it works and what they do with the trial which is coming. So I won't go on, but I would just like to thank all the officers and all the members for their hard work in getting the brown bin reinstated. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Carter, would you like to give a very brief? Thank you.
Yep, thank you, Madam Mayor. I was chair of Children's ONS last year, and I think the committee did some great work. A few times I took things to Cabinet, a few scrutiny reports to Cabinet and presented them as such, and it's worth mentioning that every member is welcome at Cabinet and can put in a question beforehand. We did some great work on the committee this year, including scrutinising the fostering recruitment programme, and the early years recruitment and retainment. Only today, at the church across the road from here, we had an event that... sorry, someone? Yeah. We had an event which was all about early years recruitment and retainment, and there was over 20 different organisations involved in that, so that was a really great piece of work by our team. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Carter. Is there any other councillor who is the chair? Councillor Worrell.
Thank you. I wasn't the chair, but I'd like to speak about the report in that, as Councillor Maldoni has said, what we've got here is a good news story, and that's what we've got very, very used to in reporting is good news stories. And on housing, we covered some really contentious issues on housing, and you have to accept a scrutiny report is not just about the bells and whistles, it's about where you're digging deep into as well, and these reports should cover that as well. We covered the problems around HMOs and landlords. We covered the problems around, you know, our housing development and what's going to happen to that. If there was the estate management, there's a huge problem with estate management, and we had a really good debate on that. So it's not just about having a report that says how great we're doing. I think that these reports need to recognise what's not so great as well, because only then can we have a work programme going forward that's meaningful. So I'd just like to point out that, you know, maybe it's not always about the good news stories.
Thank you, Councillor Worrell. Councillor, yes, Alex. Yes. Anderson, sorry, I went blank then. Sorry, Councillor.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I was chair of PTR last year, and I just want to take the opportunity to thank PTR members last year. It was a good group we had. Members always happy to have a debate, but always very amicable about it, so thank you for that. I'd also like to thank officers that facilitate our meetings and support us during them. I appreciate that, and I'm sure many other members here do too. In terms of the work we did, I just want to briefly touch on something we resolved later on during the year, and that was to set up a group that would look at the integrated transport block and the area intervention programme. This is a piece of work, I'm sure all members will have you know, those roads in your wards that never seem to get resurfaced and other highways issues. This piece of work will allow us to look deeper into how funding for those sorts of projects is allocated, and is just a great opportunity to affect some real positive change. So I would just urge every member, when that group is set up for this municipal year, to engage with that and try and affect some positive change.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Haldon.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I just wanted to comment on the point that Councillor Modoni made regarding scrutiny and how scrutiny hasn't worked. On 2 occasions, we did pause the work to reform the scrutiny process at the behest of the opposition. And I understand the reasons that opposition members gave at the time. The first occasion was almost 2 years ago, when we were coming close to an election, and Labour councillors felt there wasn't enough time to do the work. And then further, Labour asked it to be paused again last year, where they felt that they needed sight of the BVI before they changed scrutiny. So there have been attempts over the last 2 years to change it, and they have been stopped by the opposition. Understandable reasons to a certain degree. I'm not sure I entirely agreed with them, but we want to change scrutiny in a cross-party fashion. The reason I'm raising this is because certainly I have a view that what scrutiny needs to do is it needs to focus more on the things that are important rather than things that are urgent. That requires fewer committees dotted around, examining things in silos. I think it requires larger committees so we can field a greater range of talent and experiences on those committees. But what is really important, and what needs to focus all members' minds this evening, we don't have until next May to do this work. We have until January to do this work. Because quite clearly, we are not going to go through the process of changing the Constitution in a complicated fashion during the budget setting in February. And if we leave it all the way till March, we are giving officers only 6 weeks, between then and the election to create the scrutiny structure and to create the municipal timetable for the year. And the reason the timetable is so important is because the biggest change we need in the Constitution is reworking how delegations work. We need better oversight over how powers are deployed, how powers are instigated, executive decisions, for example. We need to make sure members have proper oversight of how those things work. Fashioning that into a timetable that runs in a linear fashion so decisions can't be made at cabinet meetings or decisions can't be made using executive orders that don't go in front of scrutiny, that timetabling is incredibly complicated. Officers who have done this for years tell me they think it's going to take them about 6 months from start to finish to refashion the system. So we don't have until next May to do it, we have until January to get this right. So I would just urge all members to become actively involved and actively concerned with what we do in the Constitution. I think it's very commonplace that members get exasperated about the urgent, bins, potholes, etc. But how governance works, how delegations are exercised, how power is applied in this place, that is important. It's going to take time, and it's really going to take lots more members than historically have been interested in the process to become interested in it. We've been attempting this for 3 years now, and we really need to get it right.
Thank you, Councillor Howden. No other chairs wish to speak? Thank you. Do members note the recommendations on the contents of the overview and scrutiny annual report 2022 to 2023? Agreed? Thank you. We have now come to item 12, and this is the one that I'm going to give extra time to and remind you again not to mention names, not to be repetitive, and not to pontificate. Thank you. Councillor Jeffreys, would you like to repeat?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'd first like to say that I never thought 5 years ago when I became a councillor I would be introducing this kind of report. However, having said that, I welcome the publication of the BVI, which lays bare the failures of this council in terms of leadership of administration of the past. We all have to accept the recommendations of this report and understand where we, as the 49 elected members, failed in our duties. The BVI lays bare poor scrutiny, lack of challenge to officers, overall poor governance. Only when we acknowledge the errors of the past can we look towards recovery and a future for Thurrock, which I still believe is very bright. I welcome the forthcoming debate on this report, and I hope that all 49 councillors will be able to accept their own shortcomings made clear in the BVI and think how they can ensure this doesn't happen again. The BVI also clearly identifies other areas of the council where mistakes were made and problems with the overall culture of Thurrock Council. In this regard, I seek to bring about improvements to the council's culture. This will not happen overnight, as these issues have continued for decades, but I'm pleased to see movement in the right direction. I'd like to take this opportunity to thank all councillors in this room who have stepped up to contribute to the improvements in the council's culture, be it in attending more training sessions and giving feedback to ensure these training sessions are better suited for councillors in the future, or indeed any way you're looking to improve your skills as a councillor. Thurrock continues to have a remarkable potential, and it's our public duty as councillors to ensure that this is unlocked and that Thurrock thrives with all the opportunities it should have. With so many exciting prospects in Thurrock's future and a thriving local economy, the Council of the Future should reflect this. We should be asking what we as councillors can do to ensure Thurrock is best placed to take advantage of its exceptional potential. I really do believe that Thurrock has a bright future. I'm sure many councillors would like to speak on the BVI tonight, so I'll keep my opening remarks short, but would like members to know the BVI shows shortcomings in how members have acted, more interested in elections than governing. I would have hoped all 49 have read the report and have taken this opportunity to ask what they could have done better. We should all be part of the solution, not continue to be part of the problem. And again, once again, I thank all members who have stepped up so far and are actively seeking to improve their own skills by the extension of the skills of this council.
Thank you, Councillor Jeffreys. Councillor Kent, would you like to speak? Thank you.
The long-awaited Best Value Inspection Report delivers a damning indictment of how this council has been run for the past 7 years. The report confirms that under the leadership of the Conservative group, the council recklessly gambled with £1 billion of cash borrowed from other councils. They ignored multiple warnings and red flags about the risks they were taking and launched a cover-up when they lost millions of pounds. The report is clear that this could not have happened in a well-functioning and well-led local authority. And it's clear that under this Conservative administration, Thurrock Council is anything but a well-led council. In fact, far from being a well-functioning and well-led council, the inspection team found a lack of openness and transparency, a culture of insularity and complacency that left the council, in their words, in a state of unconscious incompetence. It found dereliction in political and managerial leadership. It found failures in political and managerial leadership and oversight, and that as well as failing to set a clear political direction, Cabinet members failed to hold officers to account. All of this has happened on the Conservatives' watch, and try as they may to claim a fresh start, to claim that they're somehow unconnected with the past 7 years, the truth is that the leader of the council has sat in that cabinet since 2020, the deputy leader has been there from the start, all 7 years, and others have sat there for 4 or 5 years. Portfolio holders past and present told inspectors that they now recognise that there was a fundamental lack of curiosity, tenacity and follow-through in the scrutiny of the council's investments. We are told that Cabinet failed to set direction by taking difficult decisions, that the Cabinet avoided difficult choices on the prioritisation of resources, rejected all savings options, leaving it to officers to develop plans to achieve a balanced budget. And when in February 2020, Chip, a company that we didn't know that we'd invested in, failed, losing the council £14 million, around 10% of the annual budget, Cabinet members were told, but, in the words of the report, continued to be satisfied with spoken assurances on the performance of the programme. The report says that this should have triggered reflection and review of the overall strategy. Despite losing borrowed public money, the council did not do so. Instead, they actively worked to, in the words of the report, conceal bad news and avoid public scrutiny, going to the lengths of spending £70,000 of public money fighting through the courts to refuse to answer freedom of information requests, denying councillors the right to ask questions and blacklisting journalists that put in too many inquiries. When we called an extraordinary council meeting to discuss the borrowing and investment strategy in July 2020, 5 months after portfolio holders were told of the losses incurred by the Chip collapse, we're told that members largely ignored the information and concerns raised and instead congratulated the council and its officers on the success of the programme. All through that meeting, the Conservatives did nothing but ridicule and try to belittle us for having the temerity to question them and raise our concerns. We were told that we were sanctimonious and disingenuous, that we were a complete embarrassment and a disgrace. The previous leader of the council told us that he really enjoyed the meeting, saying he loved sitting here. I couldn't chuckle to myself enough. So, Madam Mayor, this evening we will absolutely be agreeing the 9 recommendations in the report, and we welcome their incorporation into the Council's improvement and recovery plan. I have to say that I do, however, have little confidence in the ability of those Cabinet members who have overseen this catastrophe, who have acted in such a cavalier manner to deliver that recovery.
Thank you, Councillor Kent. Councillor Morris-Cook.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. There is a lot in this report, and none of it good. The complete failure of political leadership, the unquestioning acceptance of unbelievable information, the sheer incompetence and peddling of untruths stands out like a sore thumb. True leaders take responsibility for their actions, successes and failures. They do not hide behind others or bury their heads in the sand, hoping it will go away when things go wrong. Political ineptitude loves a leadership vacuum, and that's what's happened. The rise of the useless, self-serving councillors with catastrophic consequences for everyone in Thurrock for years to come. Now we know how inept the previous Cabinet members are, how little they said or did, how uninquisitive they were. But there were those telling everyone who would listen just how well they were doing, and the rest were silent, who did and said nothing. None have clean hands, and they should individually, collectively hang their heads in shame. Instead, because they've now all claimed ignorance, they expect us to be reassured that they can clean up their own mess. You really couldn't make this stuff up. The Tory MP Jackie Dorr-Price summed it up when she told the BBC, "The people of Thurrock have decided they clearly don't want the Conservatives running the council." Yet there they all are, some in the new Cabinet, unabashed at rewarding themselves for bankrupting this council, while others still sit in the chamber. The electorate had the wisdom to boot some out, but if this report had been published before the elections, others would have gone. They all have shown they're unfit for public office. They should resign their posts and resign as councillors immediately and let the people decide.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Watson.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I too, Leader, did never think that I would be standing here as a councillor and looking at a BVI report like we've just got. I welcome this BVI report, although I am disappointed that it's not highlighted, in my opinion, the full story behind some of the decisions that have been made. For example, there is no reference to the £70,000 that was paid by the council in legal costs to stop information being given to people and organisations through the FOI process. It also has not highlighted thoroughly enough the decisions that was made by who, but it puts the blame onto officers when we all know that decisions were made by the administration in support of those officers. For example, shall we look at the A13? For years, and I mean years, throughout the scrutiny process prior to myself becoming a councillor, Councillor Kerrin kept asking questions over and over again in relation to costs and overrunning of the programme. Each time he was told by officers in the administration that they did not know, they haven't a clue, they're doing another cost analysis. I myself have asked to be told that the project is not finished and therefore unable to give any costings, yet I look within this report and the item it states, including many of those holding cabinet roles, were unaware of the significant financial losses until mid-2022. The portfolio holders and the cabinet knew there was a significant loss mid-2022 and still, when asked after this date, said they were not even aware of the costs. Well, the cost is between 64 and 68 million overspend, which I would say is more than significant. I would say it's devastatingly overspent. Again, a complete lack of open and transparency. I personally think that the ex-leader, along with the Cabinet, some that are still serving in Cabinet to this very day, have got off extremely lightly in this report and have hid behind the skirts of the senior officers taking no responsibility or accountability of leading members. You are not fit to run public office, and you're not fit to represent those that have put faith in you to serve them in this borough. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Cathy Kent.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I too was pleased to see the Best Value report being released, but was disappointed with it because there are bits that are missing from it. I'm not going to go on about that. I just want to say one point that that jumped out at me was it said, and I'll quote what it said in the report: senior officers withheld reports by specialist auditors in relation to the A13 widening project and the Stanfordley Hope Station scheme. They were never shared with members. As an ex-chair of the Standards and Audit Report, we asked for these items to be on the agenda for many meetings, and we were told they couldn't be. So we were lied to, and I feel really angry about that. And what my question is to officers and to the leader, we've got the recommendations in this report which we are going to accept. How do we make sure that this never happens again? How can we trust the information we are given and being given by the administration and officers, and how can anyone of these 49 councillors trust what we see in print at this council? Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Cathy Kent. Councillor Kieran.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. And I'd like to pick up from the point Councillor John Kent made about the extraordinary council meeting. And the reason I'm going to pick up and highlight on the mockery and derision that came from that meeting is because I think we can talk all day about the numbers in the report. It's so shocking, and that will continue over time. But I think that meeting really showed out loud what the culture of this council is. The fact that that meeting led to a pause in the investment strategy, but from the reaction of the administration, You'd think nothing had happened from it because the culture was to not listen. The culture was just to mock and belittle. And obviously there's not enough time to go through every aspect of this report. I'm going to pick up two other examples from my ward, which I believe highlight, as well as the cost and the waste of money to taxpayers that have been endured through this, but actually the culture. Because the first one, regarding the civic offices where we're sat now. Now, obviously, we were against it. We had call-ins that were just turned down on it. The residents didn't want it. And ultimately, it's now not considered viable for housing. We're going to see it was called the 10 million vanity project. If only it was still 10 million, because when you think of the cost of it now. But actually, behind that again is a cultural problem, because why are we talking about housing? Because of a press release that went out saying that we were just going to turn it into housing without any of the work being done behind it, which means that residents got a false hope that there would be viable sort of council housing to make an albeit small dent on the waiting list. And I had residents contacting me about this because of being a local ward councillor. And again, it just highlights this culture of not caring, not just about what the opposition think, but also not caring about the residents out there. Another example from my ward, which is highlighted in here, is the whole debacle around the Belmont allotments. Again, lots of residents caused distress because, going back over it now, the plan just to put a road through the park, which seems mad now, but at the time that was considered something which would have happened. So there's been a major cost to this scheme, and it's been highlighted in the report, but actually it was a resident campaign which led to the scheme being shelved, and again highlighted culture, because the administration and officers at the time were not interested in what residents were saying, and it had to be a resident fight to stop their park being bulldozed over to make way for this. And now it's led to our campaign for green space designation, which we'll be reviewing this summer to make sure it happens. So this report is going to take time to digest and a lot longer to implement. But I've highlighted but two examples from my residents in Grays Riverside about the cultural problems in this borough. And buried in this report, behind the shocking headlines and the figures, are more examples of culture where opposition and residents have been taken for granted. And until we hear from all of the residents whose communities have been affected by this, until we get to grips with the culture that allowed this to happen, we will never truly understand the mess that we're in. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Worrell.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. The BVI report was published less than 2 weeks ago at 110 pages and covering years and years of activity. I had to read it twice before I could believe what I was reading. And even now, I'm struggling to get my head around the size of the failure by so many in so many places. We've waited and waited for what really happened, and I hope that finding out the truth might have enabled me to move forward. The famous quote, "Those that fail to learn from history are doomed to repeat it." Madam Mayor, we need to look at this report line by line, page by page, again and again, until there's real change here. Now and for the future of Thurrock. We have no choice but to agree and implement the recovery plan recommendations. Only by doing so will we be somehow able to dig ourselves out of the financial disaster and breakdown of democracy here in Thurrock. Madam Mayor, I do need to comment on the published report. At point 53 on the report, it quotes a cabinet member, "When other places were looking at significant cuts, we were arguing on how to spend the surplus." I felt sick when I read that. I felt even worse when reading at point 96 of the report that in February 2020, well before Labour called the extraordinary meeting in July 2020, senior cabinets were told that £14 million had been lost in a bad investment. Yet you stood up at our extraordinary meeting and said we were liars, out of touch. We didn't know what we were saying. You continued to praise the officers for the doomed investment scheme. A cabinet member sitting in this room tonight told me in this chamber that my ward would get no money because I had publicly criticised your financial plan. You had so many opportunities to heed the warnings. I cannot comprehend why you kept going. The report said that if you had acted on the 2018 LGA review advice, if you had listened to what they warned you, and I quote, you need to think about the council finances and how they're run and implement a specialist review. All of this could have been stopped if you had heeded those warnings in 2018. But you kept going because you were too scared to make difficult decisions. Council finances and services needed to change to keep up with the changing world, and all organisations, including other councils, were doing this, but no, not us. Why? Because you were scared to lose seats in the election, too scared to upset residents in the short term to set Thurrock up for the future. You borrowed and played with our money like you had a slot machine in a casino. We had so much money we didn't know what to do with it. That statement will haunt me for many years, and I'm sure it will haunt many residents. Residents are now having their services cut. Families are going to be stuck in tower blocks for decades. We are selling assets, we are selling land, and people, local people working here at the council are losing their jobs because yous didn't do your jobs. And shame on every single one of yous.
Thank you, Councillor Worrell. Councillor Redsall.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I don't usually disagree with Councillor Worrell, but I don't think she can blame everybody because there are people sitting here that weren't here in 2016 or 2018. I think whether we've read this, I think most councillors will say we have to read it again because we won't take it in first time. I think you have to dissect it and go through it page by page. I'm not happy, for one, and I shouldn't think there's many in here, but blame culture's not good. We can't keep sitting there blaming each other for what happened. We know there was mistakes. There's a lot of things probably most of these members sitting here tonight would like to say, but can't say because of. And we've got to be very careful what we say until things come out properly. So I think the blame culture doesn't do any good. We have to, when I first started in this council nearly 20 years ago, we had training all the time. That went by the board. We didn't have it. We used to speak with officers and members in the chamber, the old chamber. We had officers and members talking to each other, which was good. Then there came the time when we were pulled away from officers and couldn't speak. So I think that's the culture that happened in the last few years. We've been pulled away from each other, and that isn't good. We have to work together. It's the only way we're going to get through this. We will get through it. It will come right, but it's going to take a long time. And as I've said, the blame culture doesn't get us anywhere. The only way we can come together with this is to talk to each other and stop being on separate sides to each other. We have to talk to each other, which a lot of us do. A lot of us get on really well, even though we're on political different sides. But we have to come together to get through this, to get us out of it. And I think that's the only way. We are having lots of training at the moment going through. Even though we've been on training before, we have to go through it again because there's always something you're going to learn. And I've got to say, whether I speak for other members, I've learnt a lot over the last few weeks, and we're not all mathematicians. We can't know everything. That's what we employ officers to do. But we're having to take on board because we're having to know what's going on. I was also shocked with a lot of things that were in there, because we all don't know what went on. We're kept separate from some of it. And you and I will both know, Lynn, that if you don't ask those questions and you don't pursue it, you won't get the answers you want. So I implore you all, please, work together to get us through this. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Muldowney.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. This report was very sober reading, but I do welcome this report at last and support the adoption of all the recommendations within it. I agree with my colleagues that the decision not to name and shame the political leaders of the council in this document is disappointing. I think there's probably some current members of the administration who will be breathing a huge sigh of relief at having escaped being singled out for criticism. However, the report does make clear that between 2016 and 2022, with little or no democratic oversight, the Section 151 officer was granted huge powers to pursue a borrow to invest strategy. The report is heavily critical of both the managerial and the political leadership of the council. At page 71 it states, members of the cabinet were prepared to trust the work of the Section 151 officer without substantial supporting evidence or independent assurance, and did not seriously question the programme as long as the revenues continued to come in. The quote that follows, which Councillor Worrell was already referred to, indeed was chilling. The money coming in was nice and we can't escape that. When other places were looking at significant cuts, we were having arguments here on how to spend the surplus. Conservative cabinet members throughout this period, however, whilst were constantly contending that they were providing excellent financial management of public money, and the phrase fixing the roof while the sun was shining was often heard in this council chamber. When in fact we know now that they were allocating these revenues to avoid cuts and council tax increases which would have disadvantaged them at the ballot box, and also using revenues to fund short-term political priorities with a weather eye always on the next set of local elections. Contrary to the Tory rhetoric, they were not used to enable service transformation or pay down debt. The BVI report lays out how the political and managerial leadership of the council ignored a whole series of red flags and prompts for reflection during the 2017 to 20 period. I'll enclose the council's treasury management advisors who wrote to the Section 151 officer in March 2018 to express their concerns about the way in which the council was managing its investment programme, and later to give notice of their intention to terminate their contract with the council. Although it's not clear whether the Section 151 officer shared the content of this letter with cabinet members, they should certainly have picked up on the fact that the council remained without a contract with anybody for treasury management advice from March 2019 to November 2022. This was certainly picked up by the Labour Group leadership, and questions were asked in both Labour Group meetings where the Section 151 officer attended, and also through in other meetings and at full council. Answers were not forthcoming. Even when the first losses became apparent, we've heard about Chip Limited, which went into administration in February 2020. The 14 million loss was viewed as minimal instead of as a loss equivalent to the 10% of the council's net revenue budget. Of course, as opposition councillors, we didn't even know the existence of this investment, and neither were we told of the loss. There are no references to the loss in reports to the Standards and Audits Committee, nor to the Corporate Overview and Scrutiny Committee. The report tells us that articles in the media which provoked questions and concerns to be raised by opposition members should have triggered reflection and review of the overall strategy, but instead Tory members and officers doubled down and defended the council's position. The BVI inspectors record that they found no evidence to suggest that members of the cabinet sought additional reassurance
Can you wind
from
up
officers.
a little bit, please?
Yes, Madam Mayor, in light of these media reports. So just to sum up, it's clear that despite repeated red flags, external challenge and criticism was too readily dismissed and downplayed by the Tory leadership of the council and by officers. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Madoni. Councillor Spate, as I said, please don't be too repetitive. Thank you.
I wonder why you picked me out to say that. Never mind. I've noted with interest the comments that have been made this evening, and there have been an awful lot of brickbats directed towards colleagues on the other side of the room. And not by way of recompense, but by way of honesty, I would like to offer at least one very small bouquet, although there is a slight caveat to that. And that is to Councillor Jeffries, to say that since I joined the council in May, I have found him open, I have found him conducive to discussing key issues, and I've also found that senior officers, many of whom are here this evening, have willingly spoken to me and have committed to trying to explain things that sometimes I'm not capable of understanding. So there are bouquets as well as brickbats. I do slightly take umbrage at the fact that Councillor Jeffries said that 49 councillors hold responsibility for what happened before, because there are a number of us who didn't take office until the 6th of May, and while we can be responsible for the recovery, I don't think we should be blamed for what went before. The point I'm going to make, I'll try to get as quick as I can, I am somewhat concerned this evening, as you will know, I'm a wordsmith and a pedant, and as that wordsmith, I've been a terrier on the back leg of this council for many years, and I welcome the BVI, and I welcome the fact that we're finally seeing what really happened. I am slightly worried in that we're told there is a new sense within the council of responsibility, there is a new openness, and there is a new will and determination to get things right. And indeed, on the oversheet for this item, it says, the publication of the best value inspection report is of significant importance to the council. And so it should be. But then what worries me is that underneath it says impact on corporate policies, priorities, performance and community impact. And then staggeringly it says there are no direct impacts as a result of this report. Just think about that. I mean, every waking moment of this council, every decision made should have a reflection on the best value inspection report. No one should be given a free ride on their decision-making process. They should, and there always must be, the impact of this BVI on the decisions made by this council.
Thank you, Councillor Spate. Councillor Arnold, please. Sorry, Councillor Deborah Arnold. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I've tried to find the words to express the situation we find ourselves in, and the words still fail me. I knocked on doors and I've had conversations, open, honest and transparent conversations. I do everything I do with integrity. So I'll take the fact that I got re-voted in as confidence from my residents that they feel I can make change. I've looked inwardly and outwardly. I've gone through an array of emotions, anger, sadness, remorse, and I've found a willfulness and a want to put things right. Like many, I was hoping for answers to where exactly blame lies, and I was hoping to quickly put the wrongs right that it found. And like many, I'm disappointed that it's not that easy. So do I accept the findings of the BVI? Yes, I do. Do I wish for more explanation and some justification for some of the accusations? Absolutely yes, but I also recognise why they've been made. Everyone is blaming everyone because we're all to blame in some way, some more than others, but nevertheless we all have a share in the responsibility for getting us where we are today and to work to put it right. Both members and officers together, those that have informed committees and written reports, and those that have sat in this chamber over the last 10 years, be it putting their politics first, or keeping tax too low, or voting against 4 yearly elections, be it not digging or asking enough questions of overview and scrutiny, or reports not telling us everything we needed to know. All members who have sat on committees should ask themselves if they asked enough questions and were they too accepting of answers. And I know I've done some soul searching, as have others across this chamber. The BVI has allowed us to reflect, and we have already started the way forward. As we peel away the layers of our onion to get to the core of the matters we're fighting, more and more wrongs need to be put right. Some across all parties are rising to that challenge, but some still are not, and they need to. I'm grateful to every officer and every member cross-party that recognise going forward the solution lies in working together, and those that still don't engage correctly in recovery need to up their game. This war won't be won by mudslinging on social media. Those still not turning up to their own committees or watching other committees or asking in-depth, meaningful questions or offering solutions should seriously ask themselves why they're here and how they can be better.
Thank you, Councillor Arnold. Councillor Shinnock.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I have read the BVI report and I was both shocked and upset at what the inspection found. You have already heard tonight from other councillors. I will not labour the point there to what has already been said. I will be agreeing to the report's recommendation, but I still have some concerns. You have various improvement boards, and I guess some more reports will go to Audit and General Services Committee. But I am concerned that backbenchers like myself will not have enough oversight and say in the way forward for Thurrock. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Shinnock. I'll take Councillor Allen next. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'll try to be brief and not take up too much of the Chamber's time. As an individual independent councillor, I don't accept any onus for the failings that took place, for falsely representing or represented financial reports that took place in the previous chamber, which painted a picture of good investment that was, in fact, far from good investment. We were told lies. Therefore, when all members voted for the investment strategy, we were under a false understanding that a great opportunity for investment was to be had. When those senior officers who solely organised the investment in the solar farms, sadly with any due diligence I add, so I do not and will not ever accept any blame for being misled by those who quite simply have shamed themselves by gambling many millions behind closed doors, which has led to us being in the current situation we find ourselves, one of bankruptcy, where residents are now expected to pick up the pieces by way of paying more for less. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Carter, please.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I think we have to, every single one of us needs to accept these recommendations in full, and everyone needs to look quite strongly at the behaviours of the past. I have stood up in this chamber before and said we all need to accept responsibility, even those who didn't vote for it, and I still believe that, because we've all been part of this culture that failed. We've heard some very emotive arguments tonight, including one from one opposition member who said, too scared to make decisions in case seats were lost at the election. Well, isn't that why they started the Borrow to Invest strategy to begin with? And these problems with Thurrock go back decades, and they won't be fixed by just blaming who was here before. We all have to look within, and we all have to improve, and I welcome all the councillors who have made steps to do this so far. Thurrock can improve, and there is a future for Thurrock and a lot of potential. There's no need to always bring it down.
Thank you, Councillor Carter. Could I have Councillor Byrne, please?
You got my name right. Thank you so much. Do I feel guilty about what's happened? Of course I do. I was one of the 49. My name's on the list that's going to go down in history. One of the 49 was there when Thurrock went bust. So do I feel guilty? I don't feel responsible, but yes, I feel guilty. 3 years ago, I read out the full CV of Liam Kavanagh and all his failures, that lot, totally ignored it. For 4 years of slated project management, they covered officers' bottom. So Councillor Jeffrey said, what could we have done different and what we could do different going forward? Listen to the expertise of the opposition. We've all got expertise that you may not have over there. Use it. We're there. But I agree with Neil. You've been approachable. The officers have been approachable since May, so I'll thank you for that.
Thank you, Councillor Byrne. I'll take Councillor Manoir. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I think one thing that the BVI report has recognised is that we need to make active changes in regards to the checks and balances which are currently in place, because one of the things that I think is a major issue within this council that I think we need to improve on is when people bring things up, when members bring forth an issue, they need to be listened to, not belittled or put down or laughed at, because I think it's easy to forget that the decisions that we're making and our conduct within this council is reflected upon the wider community. We're here to serve the people, and I think maybe some members have in the past forgot that, or they have their own sort of personal agendas which they'd rather push. Because party politics aside, and I think it's been recognised by other members, we need to come together in terms of working to create a better council. I think this BVI, although it's very damning and the people who are responsible should take responsibility for it, we need to take it as something that we can learn from and work from. And I think that it's not about mudslinging or to be passing the blame amongst everyone. At the end of the day, we do need to take accountability. Those who are responsible for those decisions do need to take accountability. And to try and dissipate the blame and try and share it around all the members, I don't think it really washes, because in the report it quite clearly acknowledges that when people in opposition did bring things up, they were shut down and they were met with hostility. So you can't have it both ways. And I think that in the future it would be nice to see more cooperation amongst members. And as a new member, I hope that my time here will be filled with cooperation on both sides. And in 10 years, I hope that we won't ever be in this situation again, and that we can make implementations that make sure that when matters are brought to our attention, they're taken seriously, and despite party politics, we can actually work together to improve. So thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Manuel. Councillor Haldon. I think you'll be the final council speaking.
First of all, congratulate Councillor Manuel on her first speech in the Chamber, which was certainly a lot more cogent than mine was 13 years ago. One area of the BVI, I'm glad Councillor Moore agrees. One area of the BVI that I think we need to consider very carefully isn't just the litany of things that went wrong. There needs to be a consideration of why remedies failed. A number of us in the Chamber have been concerned about a culture over a number of years. We've all heard that phrase, elected inconvenience, that some members have felt that they were deemed as at times. Now, there have been attempts at remedies, and we need to look past the BVI and consider why those remedies haven't been a success. I remember when Councillor Cockshaw was the Cabinet Member for Regeneration, he was deeply concerned about the A13. I know he had conversations with Councillor Kerrin as chair of PTR, and he did in fact attempt to come to PTR, and we were very disappointed and surprised when he wasn't actually allowed to speak on the A13 item. But that was the scrutiny system not working for some reason. Councillor Hebb wanted an investment committee. He actually had to go to corporate overview and scrutiny and ask for one to be set up because he didn't think it was taken with appropriate urgentness. And the most concerning thing that I find is that all members found it very alarming when a senior officer was appointed to a post when a vote was not won in full council for that post. So we removed the powers from the Section 15 from the head of paid service to appoint assistant directors. We transferred those powers to members in the General Services Committee, and clearly that, as an attempted remedy, did not force culture to change. So it's not enough just to comment on what went wrong. We need to seriously consider why remedies were not a success. One of the areas I would point to, again, would be a consideration of how the Constitution is logistically working. And consider this. The former Chief Executive, who much of this report is written about, and the former 151 officer that much of this report is written about, They were appointed by the former Labour administration. We inherited them. If we'd been defeated in 2018, you would have inherited them back. There would have been absolutely no change of how delegations work between changes of administration. And that's one of the things that we need to seriously get our heads around. And it's very much the point Councillor Manwell made. In terms of coming together, and that's not airy-fairy, we should all sit together and hum kumbaya. It is a serious consideration of how is power exercised. For example, does anyone know how many delegations are currently codified in the Constitution? I don't. And these are the considerations we need to make. So yes, let's acknowledge what the BVI says about the failures, but more importantly, for some of us who have been flagging cultural concerns, who have laboured on the Constitution Working Group to try and bring a greater level of democracy into the council, we need to consider why those remedies were not a success. And I do believe that a part of that is what I said in an earlier speech, that there is a focus at times on things that are seen as urgent rather than things that are considered important. And I believe that a reconsideration of how the Constitution works in that regard to ensure that all members are properly empowered. I think Councillor Shinnick made a relatively prescient point about how, as we exercise the recovery plan, our backbench is going to be involved. At the moment, I do not logistically understand how that is going to happen, other than simply goodwill from officers. We can't change culture by force, but we can make structural changes to the Constitution to ensure that all members are better considered.
Thank you, Councillor Howden. Councillor Jeffries, would you now like to sum up? Oh, I missed one. Councillor Spillman, I do apologise.
I mean, that report, it's not just the finances that, I mean, we all knew. I mean, I was in Cabinet from 2021 to 2023, and I sat in a meeting as late as, I think, June 2022, where I was presented by officers a plan for a balanced budget and given assurances that the portfolio of investments were performing absolutely fine. That was shocking. That could possibly occur was absolutely shocking. But and we know what's happened with the finances since. You know, the truth's come to bear. I mean, I remember getting a call. I think it was about August 2022, maybe late July. I remember because I was off at the time. I had an operation. I could barely speak, and being told the truth about where the financial position of the council was. It was truly, truly shocking to hear that. But in some ways, it's all the other stuff in the report that is just as bad, if not worse, regarding the major projects. I mean, that we've got a ship to turn around. I mean, the coverage on the major projects in the council is devastating. You know, and it's really, really worrying. But one of the sad things in the report, and I say this to a lot of the officers doing the meat and drink services of the council, it does mention in the council that there were services that were being provided to above average standard. And one of the sad things amongst all this total carnage and mess is that the efforts of people in children's care, adult services, housing, where services were of good quality, those workers on the ground that were delivering them have somehow, I can imagine how those workers are feeling right now. So we do need to recognise that although we've got a very difficult time ahead of us, there are some foundations in this council that still held firm despite all the messes that occurred. I wholeheartedly support all of the recommendations in this report. I've got a role now in PTR I've had worse reactions, to be honest. I've got a role now with PTR where I'm going to be working hand in hand with any colleague from any political persuasion to try and unpick some of these projects and make sure that this sort of thing never ever happens ever again. This isn't a time for politicking. It's sobering. I read it. I was just cold reading that report, and I think all members were.
Thank you. And apparently I've missed Councillor Snell.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I think this is important. We've had this debate tonight, and I have to say there is not a single councillor in the room that I can disagree with, argue with. I think that we needed to, especially from the opposition's point of view, to get the anger across. We understand that entirely. And I think that there might be a lack of understanding on that side, that on this side, there is also anger. There's also rage as well about what some of the things that went on. And I think tonight has been quite cathartic in that sense. And it's got to be now about how we move on. None of us want to be in the position we're in, but the fact remains we are in it. And I think it's so important now that we understand where we are, particularly financially. I've been to a couple of ONS meetings recently, and it's already, even though we've had talks from senior officers, even though we've had meetings to sort of understand where we are right now, it's already starting to get political. The short-termist approach is coming up, is coming in. We have to understand we are in a difficult financial situation. And we've got to somehow find a way where we can all work together to look at the state that we're in financially and come to some sort of cogent agreement with how we're going to move forward without the constant bickering and trying to make political points that we've always done for years about the next election. And that has been a problem. I mean, this issue is going to come up later on, I know, but there's no getting away from it. We've ducked it in the past. I've been guilty of that as well. I voted against going to longer-term elections. But I think we've got to really look at that properly, because there is no doubt that the short-termist approach that we've all taken is damaged this council, and it will continue to damage the council unless we do something about it. So it's a plea from me, really. Let's come together as best as we can. We all know that sometimes we have sort of crosswords across the chamber from time to time, but actually that's not going to do us any good. Moving forward as one unit is going to get us where we need to be. It doesn't matter who's in administration at the time when that happens, it just has to happen. So please, let's all work together and let's try and put this council back on the footing it needs to be on. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Snell. Now, Councillor Jeffreys, would you like to sum up?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I've got to say I'm slightly disappointed that the opposition, whilst Councillor Snell says you're angry, we're angry, but not one of you have actually said you'll take responsibility for what happened. The report is quite clear. We're all responsible. I take on board what Councillor Spate has said. No, the new members, no. So I was talking, we're all responsible for making sure this recovery happens. But equally, those of us that have been here longer than a year should be taking responsibility. I could stand here quite happily and say, do you know what? I wasn't here in 2018. Not my problem, nothing to do with me. I've just been re-elected. My majority was increased. Do you know what? The people of Ockenden have said, we forgive you. But I'm not. I wouldn't dare to stand here and say that. So I am really disappointed that not one member of the opposition has actually stood up and said, sorry, we were to blame, and we will work with this administration and put things right. I would thank Councillor Spate and Councillor Brown for...
Excuse me, Councillor Spillman, but not at the race course. Thank you.
The culture does need to change, yes, but we're not just talking about officer culture, we're talking about the culture here, amongst us. That needs to change. Oh, a little bit of heckling. I mean, you're one of the best at it, Councillor Worrell. Come on, you're always heckling. You got me into trouble at the last full council because you were heckling me, and the mayor told me off. Okay, Councillor Spate, Councillor Byrne, thank you for your words. And I look forward to the day when 49 councillors all say that they can see a change in the culture. So thanks for that. I'd like to reassure Councillor Shinnick that I seriously take the role of backbenchers, and my door is always open, as I said when I took on the role as leader, is always open to anyone, regardless of whether they're front bench, back bench, a new councillor. I welcome them, and I certainly will be working with my cabinet, with officers to make sure, and the Constitutional Working Group, to make sure that backbenchers' roles is firmly cemented in the governance of this council. I think it's essential, absolutely essential. I think, because I've scribbled and I've got terrible handwriting, I think that's what all I want to say. I think everyone's going to accept the recommendations. Please, let's now move forward. We've got the anger out. Now let's move forward and get this council working for the people of Thurrock.
Thank you, Councillor Jeffries. I will now proceed to the recommendations. Recommendation 1, do members note the publication of the Best Value Inspection Report on the 15th of June 2023? Thank you. Recommendation 2, do members agree to incorporate the recommendations of the report within the Council's Improvement and Recovery Plan? Agreed, everyone? Thank you. Are we all with it still? No one wants a comfort break after that? Because I'm quite conscious of how you all go in and out quite often, and I'm thinking perhaps it ought to be part of the council meeting sometimes when it's long, that you could have a comfort break. But hey-ho, stick with it. Obviously Gary needs to go, but 5 minutes, good God. Right. We have 45 minutes for this item. There were 5 questions to the leader and 11 questions to cabinet members. These can be found on pages 159 to 162 of the agenda. And what I'm going to do is a bit controversial, probably again, because I'm going to steep you all here. Where normally we say you'll get a note or something from the portfolio holder, tonight, I think I'm going to give you all a go at your questions so we can all get them out in the manner of being open, because that's what I said I was going to be, open and fair with everyone. But could you please keep it short and to the point if we do this, and we'll try doing it this time. Thank you. Would the members that have submitted the questions this time please repeat their questions so that we have it as a matter of record, and also will you not keep repeating yourselves? So, Councillor Byrne, are you here? Yeah, lovely. I didn't know if you'd gone. Questions set out on page 159.
Madam Mayor, Councillor Jeffries. Everywhere, Facebook, social media, everyone's asking the same question. All my residents are asking the same question. So can you give us an answer, please? Residents are demanding a full police investigation into Thurrock's financial affairs. Would the administration support the residents' call to call in the police or the fraud squad? Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Byrne. The leader, would you like to reply?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. And just I'll put it on the record, 45 minutes, we might need a comfort break before the 45 minutes are up. Thank you, Madam Mayor, and thank you, Councillor Byrne, for your question. This is a really easy answer for me. Yes, of course. The administration and the council are committed to fully investigating all aspects of its finances, ensuring that any necessary actions is taken. Indeed, it makes it clear in the BVI that all options are available and all options will be considered.
Councillor Byrne, would you like to ask another question?
Yes,
or the same question, but in a same theme?
Different question, maybe slightly off piece, but I'm starting to like you because yeah, it's all changed, isn't it? We're not used to it, are we? So that's great. Group hugs. There's another thing that I think needs investigating. The council now are trying to bring in cash from charity events, and they've now placed a charity tax on our Stamford Carnival. They are applying fees that have never been asked for the last 2 decades. We raise sums for St Luke's and things like that, and now the council are literally trying to peeing on our Carnival's parade.
Councillor Byrne,
Councillor
it's
Collins.
not, hang on, Councillor Byrne,
Well,
it's not a supplementary, it's not to do with your original question.
It's to do with investigations. And
No, I'm sorry, Councillor Byrne, no. Can you keep to the question? It's not a supplementary. We were talking about the police.
This is
so
to do
please
with
don't.
finance.
No, sorry.
Anyway, our council are peeing on our council. Gary Collins is fuming. We're all fuming. If you don't sort something out now, the carnival won't be able to run. So I'm throwing this in and I don't care. So you don't have to listen to it. But we want support from all 49 here to stop them putting a charity tax on our carnival. There you go.
Excuse me, Councillor Spillman. Councillor Byrne, sit down. If you feel...
Got to be Spillman again. Yeah.
Councillor Byrne and Councillor Spillman, I'm not going to accept you talking across the chamber. I'm sure now I will tell Councillor Byrne, if you feel so strongly, I would suggest you raise a motion and go through the proper way. Councillor Byrne. Good. Councillor Worrell, you've got a question. Would you like to read your question out?
I do, Madam Mayor, thank you. I don't know how you quite follow Councillor Byrne. As the new leader of Thurrock Council, what does openness and transparency mean to you?
Councillor Jeffreys.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Thank you, Councillor Worrell, for your question. Openness and transparency are fundamental principles of this administration and behind every council and local government body in the country. I'm committed to ensure this council continues to comply with the law around the access to information, which is set out within the council's constitution, Chapter 8, Access to Information Procedures, and more importantly, learn the lessons from the BVI and ensure greater transparency is brought to the council's business.
Sorry, Councillor Worrell, do you wish to pose a supplementary question to do with your original question? Thank you.
Madam Mayor. I was kind of hoping for a bit of something from the heart for what you felt about openness and transparency, but there we go. So, tonight we had our first real debate about the BVI, and sadly too much of this can be tracked back to when big decisions are made by single officers and a small amount of councillors. So, to be truly transparent, we need to find a way of everybody being kept up to speed on developments and big decisions being made by Cabinet and the Commissioners. Since 2016, substantive papers have stopped coming to this chamber for oversight and debate by all 49 councillors.
Actually, Councillor Worrell, ask a question.
Yes, it
You're
is,
making
but
a
it's got to
statement.
know the context, because I'm going to ask the question about why it doesn't happen.
Can we ask the question a bit quicker?
Okay.
Thank you.
I want to give him an example of something that's gone wrong. In the BBI report, it says that the Culver Centre, should have come to here. Scrutiny wanted it to come to here. So it's a big report that big reports need to come here. The A13 widening should have been here for 49 of us. This building should have been here for all 49 of us. Tonight, had we not had the scrutiny review on here, we would have had questions, motions, and that would have been it. If we didn't have the scrutiny report and the BVI. So take that out of here. What are we meeting for every month? We need substantive things in here to answer Councillor Shinnick's question. We need those big agenda items back. So what I'm asking from you is, can you work with the Improvement Board, with the directors, with us, with your Cabinet, to send papers here for all 49 of us to be able to debate And I'd like to see at least bi-monthly updates on the BVI brought here. And then we'll learn to work together much better if we've got all 49 of us that are growing and building a recovery. So I just want substantive stuff in openness and transparency. Make this chamber open and transparent and be marked on that, Councillor Jeffries.
Councillor Jeffries, would you like to reply?
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and thank you, Councillor Worrell, for your second question. I'm a little bit surprised by what you're saying. I think I've been pretty open and transparent since I've been leader. I promised to do that. I actually just said a minute ago, any councillor is welcome in my office to bring up an issue with me. Any councillor. Just 2 points that I'd raise with you. One of the first things I did when I was elected leader of this council was to insist that both deputy leaders of both groups attend the recovery boards. And I'm glad you did. You've attended 2 of them. There is a perfect opportunity for you to raise things on behalf of your group, and also the leader and the deputy there, you can report back to the group. Really, really important. The other thing I'd say, my track record as portfolio holder for environment stands for itself in the openness about the failings of the service. I have never, ever not admitted that the bin service was failing. Never, never, never. In fact, and I bring this up earlier on about overruling scrutiny. One of your colleagues raised this and gave a long speech about it. You know, one of the very few portfolio holders to spend over an hour at 2 ONSs, yeah, to the point that they ran out of questions. They'd got no more questions to answer. So I think my record on open and transparency is there for all to see. And I give the commitment yet again, I will do everything to ensure, as I've just said to Councillor Shinnock, backbenchers are involved, opposition parties are involved, independents, both Labour, at every opportunity I get. Sorry, one last thing as well that I would say. There already is the mechanism for ONS chairs, which Labour have now taken several of them, to actually bring reports to full council.
Councillor Worrell, your
Thank
last
you.
supplementary.
Thank you. No, I do, but I'm not sure that he actually said that he will work with officers to bring the substantive reports there, because that's what I want to see, is the substantive reports back here. You know, those big reports need to be coming back here, because not all councillors sit on scrutiny. That's what you're missing. And not all councillors will want to walk through your office door. Yeah, it is open, but they've got to come to you. I want it to be an open and transparent council. But that's by the by, because my second question is about keeping on the theme of transparency. And at budget setting in February, we pushed through, well, across the chamber, the other side, your group, pushed through £8 million worth of budget cuts. No business cases. And I raised this on the night. I was so worried that we had a list. I stood up here with the list and said, there's £8 million here, there's no business cases. But they still got voted through. And since then, there have been, you know, chunks of it taken out to the tune of nearly £1 million. And now we've got to find all the money that we've got to save, and we've got to put that £1 million back. So what I'm asking going forwards is that you ensure that everybody in this chamber has an insight and an input into those papers. Bearing in mind that, as I've said, not all councillors are on scrutiny. You know, it's a gift, and you're lucky to sit on scrutiny, but too many of them and too many backbenchers didn't know what was going on with the finances because they didn't sit on those committees. So not everybody would have seen it. So can you commit to having full business cases for the finances, for the budgets, before they're agreed? Thank you. Because we didn't have them in February.
Councillor Jeffries.
Sorry, Councillor Worrell, I missed the last point that you said. Can you make sure?
That budgets, when budgets are set, that officers write business cases behind the budget cut. That we don't agree £8 million on an A4 piece of paper and not know what the impacts are, where it's coming, what the impact of that means on another department. The BVI talked about being too insular and working in silos, but you can't make this you know, 20 odd million pounds worth of budget cuts in highways is going to affect housing, is going to affect that. We've got to, you know, join up the work that we're doing and make sure that it all makes sense and it all ties up.
Thank you, Councillor Worrell. I think we've got,
Yes. Is that all right? Does he understand? Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Thank you, Councillor Worrell. Again, easy question. Yes, 100% that will happen. What happened last budget setting won't happen again. Council will get the full details. What I would say to you again, though, ONS have the ability to call in reports. You know, when Cabinet make decisions, and I look forward to ONS calling in those reports and calling Cabinet members to those meetings and scrutinise them, and officers, you know, and question them. And then if they want to, bring them to full council as well. I appreciate what you're saying, not all councillors sit on ONS, which is why in the BVI, you know, saying that every member, some members weren't aware of what was going on. They couldn't possibly know what was going on because they don't sit on committees. But yes, more business case should be brought to full council without a shadow of a doubt. Shadow portfolios should be properly briefed by officers about what's happening. But again, I stress, ONS, it's really, really important. Councillor Helder made the point about changing them, you know, making them bigger, making them more powerful. I agree with that totally. But ONS chairs need to call reports in, members of ONS need to call reports in and then go to Cabinet as well and then bring them to the full council.
Thank you, Councillor Jeffries. I'm going to make a point here. I'm listening to both sides of the argument. And one thing that strikes me is, yes, backbenchers don't always know about everything. But I think as deputy leaders and leaders, when you all have your group meetings, that is the time to be talking about what's happening in the council and briefing backbencher members, probably not talking about elections, but talking about what's happening. And I think that would be the way forward. Informing your backbenchers, I think it is. I'm sorry, but that's my way of being open, and I think if we would all agree that that would be an open and good way to do. Anyway, Councillor Jackie Maney.
Madam Mayor, on a point of order, you are not responsible for the leadership of the Conservative group. You're not responsible for the leadership of the Labour group. In my memory, you've never attended a Labour group, so you don't know what goes on there. I think you should try to keep your comments to the good order of the meeting.
Sorry, I'm not the leader of the Conservative group. All I was commenting on was, in the way of openness, we should all be able to share all the information, which is what Councillor Worrell was saying and Councillor Chinnock. And I totally understand how backbenchers sometimes feel a little bit left out on both sides, not just Labour, on all sides, Councillor. Anyway, sorry, Councillor Jackie Maney.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I understand that the previous leader of the council wrote personally to the Transport for London and expressed this council's opposition to the London Mayor's planned ULEZ extension. Should this go ahead later this summer, it will have a devastating impact on many residents in Aveley. Will the leader also make strong representations to TfL and impress the administration's ongoing objection to the said extension?
Thank you, Councillor Maney. Councillor Jeffries.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and thank you, Councillor Maney, for your question. And let me first congratulate you as the newly elected councillor for Aveley. And I'm sure this will not be the last time we hear from you, as I know you'll be a staunch advocate for the residents of Aveley. You're right, the previous leader did write to TfL, and they have finally responded, and a meeting is in the process of being set up, to which I will attend. Be assured I will continue to express this council's total objection to this tax on motorists, which will affect some of the most vulnerable residents in our communities.
Councillor Maney, would you like to propose another question? Thank you.
Thank you, Leader, for that answer. I've been informed that the East of England Ambulance Service may be impacted financially should the ULEZ expansion go ahead. Now, obviously, the NHS doesn't fall under the council's remit, but the people we represent, obviously, it's vitally important that those services are not impacted on. So would you, in your position, be prepared to write to the Chief Executive of EEAS and ask him to explain what the impact could be on his trust?
Thank you. Councillor Jeffries.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Thank you, Councillor Maney, for your supplementary question. Yeah, I share your concern that ambulances may, incur this tax as they're transporting patients from Thurrock. So yes, I'd be only too happy to write and get confirmation that either it won't affect them or the consequences of this tax.
Councillor Maney, do you want any more questions? Yes.
Thank you, Leader, for your answer. I've been informed that TfL are going to put ULEZ signage within the border of Thurrock. Have you sought legal advice that that can happen without the consent of this council?
Councillor Jeffries.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Thank you, Councillor Maney. Yeah, we are in the process of seeking legal advice. We are concerned that even if we say no, you can't put the signs up, which, as leader of this council, I am saying no. I'm continuing with the line before. We don't want these signs up on our land. We are concerned that the way the legislation is written, that they can override this. I'm determined signs won't go up unless I'm told there's some legal reason. So we are in the process of trying to get legal advice to see if we can stop the signs from going up.
Thank you, Councillor Jeffries. Question 4, again, Councillor Maney, to the leader. Thank you.
Paragraph 83 of the BVI report, page 30. This I've got the wrong page.
Councillor Maney, when you're speaking as well, could you make sure that the mic is picking up what you're saying? Thank you.
What steps, thank you, Madam Mayor, what steps does the leader believe the council should now take in order to ensure that the findings of the Best Value Inspection report shape lasting good practice to Thurrock Council?
Sir Jeffries.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Thank you, Councillor Maney. See, I said it wouldn't be the last time that you'd ask a question. Thank you for your question. As members discussed when considering the early item on the Best Value Inspection report, the steps we need to take to ensure lasting good practice are detailed and wide-ranging, and we must use this report to help us move forward and accelerate our improvement journey and not let it drag us backwards. In broad summary, the specific steps we need to take focus on key areas of finance, governance, and the future direction and operating model of the council. Members will recognise that I have constructed my cabinet with those areas in mind. Councillor Snell is leading on finance, Councillor Arnold is leading on transformational change, governance, and directional leadership resting with me as leader. The detail that sits below this will be captured in an enhanced improvement and recovery plan, which all members will be involved in shaping in partnership with officers. But my reflections on each are as follows. On finance, we have made great strides since the intervention, but there is still a lot of work to do. We are well on our way to have the right and proper policies in place, but securing financial sustainability will require hard work and tough decisions. On governance, work is underway to make improvements to our constitution, review the functions of overview and scrutiny, to be more open and transparent, and review the role of audit and risk management, what the report refers to as control environment. On the future of the council, we need to have a broad discussion with each other as members, partners and residents about what the council will look like going forward within the financial restraints we find ourselves in. There's also a fourth area, and that is one of culture. The report details the inspector's view of a culture of insularity and complacency based on a lack of openness and transparency. For all these steps to work, it's important that the councillors and officers from across the council accept responsibility for what has happened and must work collaboratively to put things right. As I've said in my public statements on the day it was published, we have a duty to both residents and the borough that we call home. Under my leadership, the drive to recover the council's finances and transform the way we operate will be the #1 priority. All councillors, including me, must take ownership of the improvement and recovery plan. We will remain accountable throughout this journey and keep residents informed along the way.
Councillor Manning.
Thank you, Leader, for that answer. It actually says in the report, when investments have incurred losses, members and officers are sought to hide those losses. That's a serious accusation. What evidence have you seen that any past or present member has willfully hidden those investment losses?
Thank you, Councillor Maney. Councillor Jeffries.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Thank you, Councillor Maney. I too was alarmed by that part of the report, and I have actually contacted the BVI authors and asked for clarification on that and the evidence that they've got, and I'll happily come back to full council when I get a response.
Councillor Maney. No further questions? Thank you. Question 5, Councillor John Kent. Would you like to ask your question, please?
Can the Leader of the Council confirm the overspend on widening the A13 is between £64 and £68 million?
Leader of the Council.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Thank you, Councillor Kent, for your question. The BVI accurately reflects how the cost of the A13 widening project increased in an unacceptable way during the scheme's delivery. As a council, we acknowledge that this can never happen again when we are working on future infrastructure projects. A report scheduled to go before Cabinet next month will go into further details around the failings in the design, commissioning, procurement and management of the project and how these will be communicated to members and to the public. While the completion of the A13 widening project is welcomed improvement that will help to capitalise on the Freeport status and other opportunities for growth across the borough, the outcome has left us with a significant financial burden and many lessons to learn. The report for Cabinet will confirm that the original budget for the project, approved in March 2016, was £78.9 million, and that the project's final cost will be approximately £147.5 million. This represents an increase of £68.6 million, or 86%. It is clear the original budget was set too low for the project of this scale. An independent review of 25 similar projects by the Institute of Civil Engineers has confirmed the average percentage increase between contracted cost price and the final cost was 79.8%. We should not and will not ignore our failings. We must take this learning forward as it is understood and reported in the BVI, and that these failings are not unique to this project.
Councillor Kent, I'm sure you've got more questions. No? Thank you. Councillor Byrne. Your question to Councillor Jeffries, please.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Councillor Jeffries. Is it all about money that prevents us from delivering a 3-bin, soon-to-be 4-bin weekly collection service?
Leader.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Thank you, Councillor Byrne. No.
Councillor Byrne, would you like to... Hang on. Councillor Byrne, would you like to pose another question?
Yeah. Your election leaflet said we are fixing the bins. So whoever put that out, thank you so much. That was gold dust for the opposition. But your election leaflet said we are fixing the bins. It's also said we have a hand-picked management team to make it happen. So What's stopping you from fixing the bins? Why is this newly hand-picked, very costly management team letting you down? They're letting you down. You picked the team, so. And you're sending out a clear message that TBC have little or no interest in recycling.
Leader.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Thank you, Councillor Byrne. One of my first actions as Mayor was to get the Madam Mayor. Sorry, Madam Mayor. One of the first actions I had as leader was to get the brown bins reinstated. We've now got general waste being collected, recycling being collected, and brown bins being collected, and we've got a trial for food waste, and we've brought in an expert to do a complete review of the bin service to make sure we get a modern 21st century bin collection service.
Councillor Byrne, have you a third supplementary?
Yes, I
to the
didn't get
point?
an answer why you're failing, but let's carry on. But residents are really concerned that the new wind-up that's been introduced, the blue bin crew, or the crews, they reverse down to our residents' road. They spend the same amount of time in that road that they would do empty bins, but they don't empty the bins. Then they go on to the next road, they reverse down that road, they sit there for the exact amount of time that they would do to empty them bins, and then they drive off again. They've done that all over, that last Saturday week, they've done it all over the homesteads. And what project manager would think that's a good idea? That just really winds up the residents. They see their blue bin about to be emptied, then they drive off and they go,
Councillor Byrne, what's the question?
what's the question? Who's come up with this crazy idea? That's the question.
Right, that point would have been quicker.
Is it the new expensive
Thank you,
management
Councillor
team?
Byrne. Leader.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'm stumped slightly because, I mean, nobody's come up with a policy that has said, drive down a road, don't collect the bins, and then drive off. We haven't done it. And it's quite a serious accusation to make against our hard-working bin crews. It really is. If you... Councillor Byrne, if you allow me to answer.
Councillor Byrne.
If you have evidence of that happening, please send me an email. I'll get it investigated straight away. One of the things that's really improved in the bin service over the last 6 months is that the strategic leaders made sure that when complaints are raised, particularly by councillors, they're investigated immediately and resolution is found. Has it worked every time? No, it never will. But we're getting better at resolving issues that are raised, particularly when they're raised by councillors. That is because normally residents have gone all around the houses trying to make a complaint, haven't got anywhere, they've then come to a councillor, and that's the way it should happen.
Thank you, Leader. Excuse me, Councillor Byrne. Question number 2 from Councillor Pearce to Councillor Carter. Can you read out your question, please, Councillor Pearce?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. It is not Thurrock's Council responsible for building a new school. The Department of Education are leading to the development of... Oh, sorry. Where are we here?
And Councillor Pearce, could you be...
Sorry,
Councillor Pearce, could you...
It's all the excitement, Madam Mayor.
No, Councillor Pearce, could you actually make sure you're speak because they're recording it? Thank you.
Right, there we go again. Work on the new school site in Love Lane, Aveley, has come to a halt as a result of a developer going into administration, we are told. Please would the portfolio holder for education provide an update on the situation and advise whether works are likely to resume in the near future. Thank you.
Councillor Carter.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and thank you, Councillor Pearce, for your question. I would love to give you an answer. Unfortunately, it's not the council who are responsible for... who are responsible for building this school. The Department for Education are leading on the development of this new school, and they are in the process of re-procuring the contract to deliver the new school in the future. At this stage, an opening date cannot be confirmed. However, a further update could be provided in the autumn term.
Councillor Pearce, have your supplementary.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I appreciate that the Council is not responsible for the construction project. However, given that the Education Department was so keen to support this school, I'm sure it will not want to distance itself from the situation now. Please would you ensure that any updates received by the Council from the Department of Education are delayed to ward members so that we in turn can keep local residents informed? Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Pearce. Councillor Carter.
Yes.
Thank you. Councillor Pearce, no other question? No. Question 3 from Councillor Pearce to Councillor George Cockshaw. And could you read out the question first? Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. The environmental extremists are once again hitting the headlines, having disrupted a number of national events, including the Chelsea Flower Show, of all things. Given that Thurrock has previously suffered in the hands of such extremists, will the portfolio holder for public protection assure the Chamber that the police and council will be prepared as possible when it comes to dealing with any future disruption in the borough? Thank you.
Councillor Cockshaw.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and thank you for your question, Councillor Pearce. I think, as you say, Thurrock residents have felt the backhand of this from protests in the last year and a half. I think when you think back to the disruption it caused at London Road, the disruption it subsequently caused on our bin crews and our bin collections, I think there is a real issue here. When they dig under the road, the cost of it to the borough was not just economically, but our services were hit. And I really want to make sure I give you the reassurance that we're working constantly in contact with our Essex Police and other partners just to make sure that any intelligence, any sniff of that, we're with them, we're sharing our information, and we can have a quick and efficient response to make sure it's effective to ensure any disruption to our residents is minimised.
Councillor Pearce.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Thank you for that answer. I know the residents in Aveley and Uplands will be reassured by the fact that under the Conservatives we will take a hard line against these extremists. It's a shame that the party opposite have chosen to embrace them instead of giving the mayhem, Extinction Rebellion and their allies that have caused locally. Should this situation, yes, reoccur, will Councillor Cockshaw confirm that the Council will consider using all available powers, including a request for a further injunction, in order to ensure that local people and businesses are not held to ransom by environmental thugs?
Thank you, Councillor Pearce. Councillor Carter. Sorry, Councillor George Cockshaw. I do apologise.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and thank you, Councillor, for your supplementary question. I think even today, may I just point out the cricket. Our hats go off to Johnny Bairstow, who just picked him up and dragged him away. We have had enough of this, and we will make sure we use all the powers available. And the injunction itself, if need be, we will go forward with that again. And I'd like to point out, because it was in partnership with Essex County Council, it was really making sure our fuel depots are safe and avoiding from any disruption whatsoever, because that impacts not just in Thurrock, it impacts the rest of the country as well, because this is the big thing here, where our fuel depots, it's coming all in through Thurrock, and if there's a blockage here, it blocks everywhere else. And I'd also like to point out really as well that the injunction did its job, but it's make sure it's going back, working closely with the police, and that really underlines it. If we look over what's been going on more recently, we've also seen the Public Order Act has started to be used, and we've started to make sure any sort of serious disruption, which is beyond what is reasonably expected, should be stopped, and they should be taken away straight away by the police.
Thank you, Councillor Cockshaw. Councillor Redsall, your question number 4. And it's printed on page 160. If you could read the question, please, first.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. The leader will recall that a number of serious fires occurred in Hangman's Wood in Woodside last summer, putting nearby residents' properties at risk. Would the portfolio holder please reinstate his commitment to ensure that grass at Hangman's Wood is cut short well before it becomes tall and subsequently dries in the summer heat? The paths and fire breaks are maintained and do not become overgrown. Also, that this need arise, the emergency service will have unencumbered access to the site.
Councillor Jeffreys.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Thank you, Councillor Redseal. Absolutely. Following the issues that arose last year, Hangman's Wood has had the fire breaks routinely cut this year, with the last cuts on the 24th of April, the 15th of May and the 6th of June. This will continue to be cut every 3 to 4 weeks over the summer season.
Councillor Redseal.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Thank you, Councillor Jeffreys, for that. Just to say that we've mentioned the access for entering the site needs keys. I think last year 5 were made, but they weren't given out. And they haven't, I don't think still, I'm not sure. Could you, with your portfolio hat on, make sure this doesn't happen again? Because if the fire service can't get in there, it relied on, I think last year, of people getting their hoses out and using their hoses because the fire just couldn't gain access to it. So, you know, can we make sure that it really doesn't happen again? So we're getting the hot weather again. So thank you for that.
Thank you, Councillor Redseal. Councillor Jeffreys, do you want to respond?
Thank you, Councillor Redseal. If it helps, I'm more than happy to write to the fire service to find out if they've got the keys, and if they haven't, to make sure they do have the keys.
Thank you. Councillor Redseal, question number 5, page 160. If you would read your question first, please.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. With the lighter evenings now upon us and residents spending more time outside or with windows open, will the portfolio holder for community safety ensure the chamber that the police operations aimed at tackling nuisance off-road motorbikes will continue?
Councillor Cockshaw.
Nearly there. Thank you, Madam Mayor, and thank you, Councillor, for your question. Now, of course, definitely, with the antisocial behaviour through off-road bikes is a serious problem. And I know, as Councillor Fabella, so long issue where they just drive down the middle of the roads and off into the Mardyke. It's a problem that's just straight across the borough, and I'm really pleased Operation Caesar is still going ahead. So I can give you the guarantee it doesn't just stop in the winter, it continues in the summer as well. So that is going to continue all the way through. And of course, the police continue to liaise with us and will deploy in areas of any major serious concern as and when to ensure that this type of antisocial behaviour is cracked down upon and hold anyone to account while seizing their bikes to make sure they can't do it again.
Councillor Redseal, do you want to pose a secondary question?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Yeah, I would actually. Thank you for that, Councillor Cockshaw. I know Caesar is still working, and motorbikes, it's across the borough, it isn't just Blackshots Ward, but we are seeing them coming back slightly now, and we're getting lorries coming from London area to here to park. We have put things in place to stop them parking, but it's creeping back into other roads near. So I just want to make sure, I know we've put the motorbikes in place to catch the perpetrators, because it's very hard if we can't go after them. The motorbikes are becoming, well, so could you, with your assurances that the police operations will not cease, they will carry on?
Councillor Cockshaw.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and thank you for your supplementary question, Councillor Redseal. Yes, no, of course. This is underlining one of the first things I actually brought up in my portfolio holder meetings last week, to point out that this type of antisocial behaviour is just completely unacceptable. The big thing I would say, I did request last week data from Essex Police in terms of the whole year of how Operation Caesar actually went. I'm still waiting for that information, so hopefully I will be able to give it to you very soon. Of course, I will write to you to confirm that. I would like also to say I have received, of course, I've received the incident reports so far this year, and I will actually maintain and continue to make sure we're kept updated. Of course, this is with Paulo, I will make sure to keep on top of this. This is the distractions this causes to residents. It's seriously dangerous to all those on the roads, pedestrians or drivers, and it really needs to make sure we take a tough action on this.
Thank you, Councillor Cockshaw. Councillor Redseal.
Yeah, I wasn't going to ask another supplementary, but just to say that we have paid for these bikes to be used, and I think most of the members here have had trouble in their ward from the motorbikes, and they are just causing hell to us as residents, and which I am one, and we all are in here. So I just want to make sure that the money is being spent in the proper way and the motorbikes are being used in the proper way. Thank you.
Councillor Cockshaw.
Thank you for the second supplementary. Yes, no, of course, the council provided the money for these two quad bikes on the sole reason that the police said, sorry, they've gone off road, we can't chase them in our cars. It's our investment, it's our money that we've paid to make sure they can continue to pursue even when they go off road, and we'll make sure holding them to account to make sure they are being used effectively.
Thank you, Councillor Cockshaw. Question 6, Councillor Onoje. Please read out your question on page 160 and read the question first. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. My question is on antisocial behaviour. Chafford 100 has recently been inundated with high level of antisocial behaviours, particularly in the train station areas. The residents are highly concerned with the impact this is having on their safety, well-being, and businesses in the community. Could a portfolio holder kindly tell this chamber and the residents of Chafford 100 what the council can do to help eradicate this ugly situation? Thank you.
Councillor George Cockshaw.
Oh, thank you, Madam Mayor, and thank you, Councillor, for your question. No, of course, this is antisocial behaviour at Chafford 100 Station. It's been long on the agenda of the Police and Fire and Crime Commissioner. Separately to that, I'm quite pleased this week, and it happened yesterday, that there was the police did an action walkabout around in Lakeside. I don't know if any members may have seen it. Sadly, I was unable to attend due to prior work commitments, but they went through the centre, they met with the centre team, they're working, it's not just at Chafford Station, there's a wider issue going on there in terms of antisocial behaviour. And I will make sure, I know the Designing Out Crime team are also being really heavily quite involved in terms of where we also look across the borough. I'd like to point out I also am hoping to go on the next one of these operations as a portfolio holder, and of course the next one in Chafford I will look to invite both ward members to make sure they are fully linked in. In response, especially to what the council is doing, especially, I understand the environmental enforcement officers have been asked to start patrolling around the Chafford area, ideally present a uniformed response in terms of, although we may not have the powers exactly to enforce, because obviously antisocial behaviour does lie with the police, it's to ensure that it gives the residents a bit more safety knowing there is a uniformed official there, and they'll be able to both enforce other nuisance crimes, littering, fly tipping, etc.
Councillor Onoje.
Thank you, Councillor Cockshaw, for the promises you have made. Yes, there has been some improvement in terms of the patrol of the police officers around there. Could you kindly extend this concern to the police commissioner, Roger Hurst? Thank you.
Councillor George Cockshaw.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and thank you, Councillor, for your supplementary question. Yes, of course, I'm more than happy to extend an invite back to the Police, Fire and Crime Commissioner to invite him down to Thurrock once again to make sure he can talk with not only just ward members, but also the residents who are really concerned about this type of behaviour. And of course, I'll go away this week and I will write to him and I'll see if we can set up a date. And as soon as I have that, I'll be more than happy to update you in the chamber.
Thank you, Councillor Onoje.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. That's from me.
Thank you. Question number 7, Councillor Arnold to Councillor Ben Maney. Sorry, Councillor Paul Arnold.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Would the portfolio holder for regeneration and highways comment on suggestions that school crossing patrol officers could be withdrawn?
Councillor Arnold? Sorry, Councillor Maney. I'm sorry.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and thank you, Councillor Arnold, for your question. Madam Mayor, I stated at Cabinet on the 14th of June that there's no will on the part of Cabinet, and certainly no intention on my part to see the school crossing patrol service terminated, and I'm grateful to have the opportunity to restate that. We very much intend for the service to continue. What has happened, it is a non-statutory service, so we are obliged to review that and see whether we can provide it in a more cost-effective way. And as part of that, we're engaging individual schools and third parties in the borough to see whether they would pick up some of that cost and work in partnership with us. But let me be very clear, where we can't secure outside funding, we certainly will not withdraw the funding that the council makes available and therefore see the cessation of the service. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Arnold.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. As chair of the Corporate Parenting Committee, I naturally take the welfare of our children very seriously. If there are to be any changes in the way the school crossing patrols are funded, please would you commit to ensure that the relevant overview and scrutiny committee is able to fully scrutinise this before a decision is made?
Councillor Maney.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'm fully aware of Councillor Arnold's interest in this, and indeed it's a subject that is of great interest to, I think, many residents and parents across the borough, and the simple answer to that is yes. If there is to be any changes in the way that we fund the service, they will of course come before overview and scrutiny, before they're fully endorsed by Cabinet. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Arnold. Councillor Worrell, question number 8. Thank you.
Can the Cabinet Member of Environment explain to members why the green spaces, including grass verges across Thurrock, are being left uncut for longer periods this year?
Excuse me for a moment. Councillor Spate wishes to ask me a question.
As we appear to be going through the rest of the questions, which is great, I'd like to take this opportunity to ask that we can suspend then standing orders under procedure 11.1 so we can complete the business of this meeting within the rules of the council.
Councillor Spate, I think I'd already said that, and I was going to remind everyone at 9:45 that we were going to go all the way through, because I'm determined that everyone's going to get opportunity to ask their questions, and then the 3 motions. So I am aware of the time. I do realise it's tiring, and if you all want a break, I'm quite willing to do that. Or do you want me to continue with the questions? Thank you. Sorry, Councillor Worrell. Councillor Jeffries to respond.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. And thank you, Councillor Worrell, for your question. Back in December 2021, I took a paper to Cabinet which was agreed. I believe it also went to ONS, and that was part of the wilding policy. And that was that areas of grass cutting team were purposely to leave uncut areas to help to create a habitat for local wildlife. While these are areas across Thurrock that have to be cut to specified standards and maintenance obligations, such as sports pitches, and maintenance of sightlines at road junction, the council recognised that the creation of long grass areas as habitat has benefit to wildlife. These uncut areas provide vital shelter for invertebrates to breed, protect and improve biodiversity and supporting pollinator species. In addition, they can also trap air pollution, which benefits the locality. This approach also allows us to use our ground maintenance resources where they are most needed.
Thank you, Leader. Councillor Worrell.
Thank you, Councillor Jeffries. But I have learned something tonight, that now you're leader, you've got the bins picked up. I just wish you maybe had been leader a little bit earlier, because we might not have had to go through all of this stuff. But now you're leader, we can get our bins picked up.
Hang on, Councillor Worrell. I don't want any statements. Questions, please.
So, I find it a little bit, so what residents like is, you know, and they expect universal services, bins, grass, you know, you expect your grass to be cut, we all pay for that, okay? I'm not quite buying the leaving it for habitat. As you drive around Thurrock, I went to Chafford Hundred yesterday, 2-foot weeds, bins sprayed, dead, like straw, 2 foot high. There ain't no habitat living in that, okay? Went to the cemeteries on Father's Day, this deep, right, around the graves. Not acceptable. Had a little drive yesterday. I went to Blackshots,
Councillor Worrell, I don't really.
I
know. Hang on, Councillor Worrell. I'm getting the history of your social life of where you drive. I'd rather you ask the question.
It's important. It's the grass.
Please, a question.
So, basically, I have been in contact with the environment team, and it basically boils down to We haven't got enough staff. We've laid staff off. It's taking longer to get round. Well, that's what the emails say. Okay, so I've had an email to say a decision was made that we don't trim anymore around street furniture, around I'll send it to you tomorrow, around knee bars, around lamp posts. They're not spraying that, they're not cutting that anymore, they're not trimming. They're also not going around with the blower either. So when they cut, it's all over the
Councillor
parts.
Worrell,
It
the
looks a
question.
mess. The question is, I've asked him, who made that decision?
All right.
To
Thank
do
you.
it, because if you don't know, again, your officers are not doing what you're being told.
Councillor Jeffreys, would you respond?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Thank you, Councillor Worrell, for your question. Cemeteries, I agree. It was terrible. They were left in a terrible state, and I gave specific instructions that they should get out there and get them cut, and they did. They got that wrong. Have we got it right? Have we got the long grass plan right? No. It's the first year we're doing it, and yes, there have been mistakes made. I agree. But in December 2021, the paper was brought to Cabinet and agreed as a good idea. Yeah. So that's why I'm surprised you're asking what we're actually doing, because it was clear in December 2021 what we were actually doing. As I said, have we got it right? No. The team know they haven't quite got it right, and they have made mistakes in areas. So they're going to work on that, and we're going to get it right. It's a good idea. It helps the environment. People do like it. And if you, there's only one sign out that I've seen. If you go up to Blackshots, there's a sign been put out specifically telling people, please excuse the weeds, we're feeding the bees.
Councillor Worrell, would you like to ask your last supplementary?
Yeah, I'm just not buying it, Madam Mayor. So I don't think I will be asking I won't ask a secondary, because I don't think it is a genuine answer. Thurrock looks a damn mess. Right?
Thank you,
it's a shame.
Councillor Worrell.
It's a right
Councillor
old
Worrell,
mess here in Thurrock.
Councillor Worrell, statements. I just want answers. Councillor Kent. Councillor John Kent.
Will the portfolio holder set out his priorities for the municipal year?
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and thank you for your question, Councillor Kent. As portfolio holder, my strategic priorities for this year are to work and support all education settings to ensure children and young people are engaging in education and enjoying learning. I want to ensure we are supporting both young people and adults to gain the skills they need to access local employment opportunities, and ensure the local authority and partners are preparing well for the SEND/alternative provision, Ofsted inspection, and the services meet the needs of the children and young people. And I want to make sure that in line with the Section 114 notice, the statutory provision is provided.
Councillor John Kent, would you like to pose a supplementary question, please?
The portfolio holder would have seen that the Department of Education has identified 572 schools across the country where it believes that reinforced autoclaved aerated concrete, a building material that deteriorates over time and is susceptible to sudden failure, may have been used during construction. Can the portfolio holder tell us whether he believes any schools in Thurrock have been built using this material?
Councillor Carter.
I'll be happy to look into that for you and get back to you, Councillor Kent.
Councillor Kent, do you want to propose the last supplementary?
Given that the Department for Education has assessed the possibility of a building collapse or failure causing death or injury as a critical and very likely risk because of this building material, can I just ask that that is done as a matter of urgency and reported back before the next meeting?
Thank you, Councillor Carter.
Indeed, Councillor Kent, and I will email you back, and it is disappointing you haven't emailed me and decided to save these for meetings instead, if they are obviously of so much importance to you.
Madam Mayor, the report came out this morning.
Hang on, it's my meeting. Stop. Right, Councillor John Kent again, question 10 to Councillor Maney this time. Thank you.
Will the portfolio holder agree to consultation on introducing residents' parking in the Richmond Road area of Grays?
Councillor Maney.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Thank you, Councillor Kent, for your question. I don't think at this stage I can give a firm commitment that we will agree to a consultation exercise with residents in Richmond Road. The primary reason for that is that any consultation and resulting scheme would need to be funded from the integrated transport block allocation, and as you'll know, that's already been allocated for this year. But at the same time, you know, we do periodically review the ITB, and it is possible to move resources around within the programme. So I'm certainly not saying no. I'm open to the idea of consulting residents. It is something I'll take away and discuss with officers, and if we can find a way forward and we can agree a consultation, then I wouldn't have any objection to that. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Councillor Kent.
I'm grateful for that answer. Residents in the Richmond Road area of Grays have had incredible problems with parking since the Adult Education Centre was demolished and took away a number of parking spaces. It's exacerbated by streets on the other side of East Thurrock Road being in a parking zone. So my question is, will you do all you can to persuade officers to try and get a consultation up and running as soon as possible, just to give residents in that part of Grays some hope?
Councillor Carter. Maney.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I like the fact that you think I'm 20 years younger, but alas. To be clear, if I give an instruction to officers to do it, they will. It's not something that I would need to persuade them to do, but at the same time, we do get requests from across the borough for people to be included in, for roads that are not currently in PPAs to be added to them, and equally for areas to come out. So, you know, we do have to balance a number of considerations. If we do it for Richmond Road, what do we say to other areas that we've asked to wait a little bit longer? I know the situation in Richmond Road has changed for the reasons you've outlined, but you know, Richmond Road, Salisbury Road, and I think Kent Road were previously consulted on whether they wanted to be in, I think it was Zone M of the Grays PPA, and they opted to not become part of a PPA. I know, as you say, the situation has changed, but at least they have had the opportunity to be consulted on that, where some areas, particularly in Ockenden, they've never had chance to be included or asked their views on whether they want to be included in a PPA. And there is very much a desire amongst residents to be included. So, as I said, a number of things to be considered, but I'm more than happy to take that forward and see if we can find a way forward. Thank you.
Councillor Kent, have you another?
Yeah, would the portfolio holder accept that that last consultation was 8 years ago now, and there has been that huge material change with the demolition of the old Adult Education College, which has removed a huge amount of parking that was available to people in those streets. So would you not agree that this is a different and unique case?
Councillor Maney.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I do agree. I think I acknowledge that, and that's why I'm prepared to relook at the situation. If there hadn't been any change, then I think it will be fair to say not at this stage. But mindful of those changes, I am prepared to look at it with officers and keep you and other ward councillors informed. Thank you.
Thank you. Question 11 from Councillor Fish to Councillor Johnson, please.
Can the portfolio holder tell me when window replacement scheme for the high-rise flats in South Grays will be completed?
Councillor Johnson.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Thank you for your question, Councillor Fish. Unfortunately, I cannot give an exact completion date for the window replacement scheme for those high-rise flats. But if I could just give you a bit of background, the project over the 6 tower blocks includes a number of significant areas of work, with the window replacement to all 348 flats being only part of it. Also included is the full replacement of the external wall system, a roof renewal, smoke ventilation improvements, and decorations. Negotiations are ongoing with the appointed contractor, and the Council is very conscious of the fact that these negotiations will undoubtedly extend the timeline. And we have updated residents by way of a written update in May, which was followed up with face-to-face engagement sessions with council officers and the contractor's representatives. However, the face-to-face element was not very well attended. In fact, I believe only 2 households turned up. So maybe I could speak with you and your ward colleagues later at some point and ask if you could try again to rally some interest in obtaining a face-to-face meeting with residents, as we really do want to get this message out there. I assure you that the Council remains committed to resolve matters as soon as possible, and we will provide regular updates to the ward councillors and the residents. But I have to reiterate, it's essential that we deal with the legal aspects of the contract which is in place with the appointed contractors to ensure they meet their obligations. Best value is achieved for both the Council and, of course, the residents.
Thank you. Councillor Fish.
Thank you for your response. Very disappointed to hear your response. This has been going on since 2019, to my knowledge. This is when it was first mooted to me that this project was going to happen. Residents were very pleased to hear that it was going to happen. But sadly, it seems to have just joined the list of other projects in the borough that have failed, such as the Stanford Railway Station.
Councillor Fish,
A13.
that's nothing to do with your original question. We were talking about windows.
It's about failed projects in the borough. This is clearly a failed project.
Councillor Fish,
right.
Come on, that
Now,
you
right,
know.
okay. My question,
Thank you.
my first supplementary, does the portfolio holder accept that residents are disillusioned now? They're fed up with waiting for so long that they deserve better? Would he be prepared to apologise to them?
Councillor Johnson.
Certainly apologise for the amount of time it's taking. I'm no problem with that whatsoever, but I don't know if you heard, I did, in answering your question in the beginning, say there are legal aspects of this that have to be answered. They have to ensure that those contractors will deliver what they said they're going to deliver. I don't know why you said it's joining the long list of failed projects. It's not failed, and the budget for this project remains in place and is no way affected by the wider financial constraints on the council. So we remain committed to and in a position to deliver on all of the committed works. I apologise that it hasn't happened as quickly as it should have, and I hope you will take me up on my offer of you and your ward colleagues trying to get the residents to come out and have more face-to-face discussions with the council officers.
Councillor Fish.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. One of the things that the residents feel really strongly about is the poor level of compensation that they've been offered so far for the delay and other problems over winter, having to suffer with a building that was much colder, with the cladding having been taken off. So would the portfolio holder consider increased levels of compensation?
Councillor Johnson.
I'm sorry to sound like an old record, Councillor Fish, but I mentioned in here that there are legal aspects that are ongoing. I can't talk about here, and I don't wish to talk about here, but you said the residents are really disappointed. Let them sit down with the officers and tell them that. As I said, we tried to have a face-to-face discussion with them, and only 2 households turned up. So please take me up on my offer. Let's get the residents sat down, and nothing's off the table. If compensation is to be paid, it will be paid at the right level, but only once all the legal aspects have been sorted out with the contractors at the moment.
Thank you, Councillor Johnson. Right, we now move to item 14, reports from members representing the council on outside bodies. Does any member who represents council on an outside body wish to present a report? Councillor Spate.
It will be brief. I must make a note for the record regarding my appointment to the outside body East Thurrock Community Association. Somewhat embarrassingly, following last month's meeting when I was elected to represent the council wrote to the association to ask what the appointment entails. I was stunned to find that the council has no record of what this role is. However, I will report it's a very important organisation within my community, and I am looking forward to meeting with association members and forging a bond on the council's behalf. But might I ask what has happened to the other outside bodies that have disappeared? For example, Coalhouse Fort. The council is responsible for this important site, leasing it from the MOD. The council used to be represented on the Coalhouse Fort project. What representation and who with do we have now? That is a rhetorical question, as I think it's probably for another occasion.
Councillor Spate, thank you. Any other councillor wishing to speak on when they've been on outside bodies? No. Item 15, minutes of committees. These are listed on the agenda on the contents page. Any member wishes to comment? No. Item 16, motions update. The report can be found on page 163 of the agenda and is for information of the status of previous motions. We now come to the motions. Councillor Kent, you're the first. Do you wish to propose and speak, and then speak to your motion as printed on page 165 of the agenda? You have 5 minutes. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Madam Mayor, until relatively recently, we had a refuse service to be proud of. The men and women of that service would collect 3 bins each and every week from around 60,000 houses across Thurrock. That's without flats. That's over 9 million bins emptied each year, and fewer than 4% of bins were missed. They were collected on the right day. That was a remarkable record, and I want to pay tribute to all those who work in the service, doing still a pretty tough job, week in and week out, whatever the weather. But it does seem over the last few years that the quality of the refuse service has deteriorated to such a degree that it is now clearly failing our residents. In all the years that I've been a member of this council, I have never received as many complaints about this service as I have over the last year. And people will rightly ask, if we can't even empty the bins, how can we be trusted to lead the recovery of this council from the financial catastrophe that has engulfed us? The brown bin service in particular has been an absolute disaster, with many, many residents telling us that they have gone months on end without having their bin emptied. And when the brown bins have been collected, it's had a knock-on effect, so they've been collected at the price of the collection of the blue and green bins. The chaos we've seen in emptying the bins has to end. So I'm glad that Cabinet has decided to alternate the blue and brown bins collections, but I am concerned that this is an interim measure pending yet another review of the service. This will be, by my reckoning, the 3rd such review in the last few years, going back to the cross-party waste management working group that reported in 2020. That group had the remit of looking at the refuse service to identify ways of driving up recycling rates, which were at around 34%. Those rates don't now seem to appear on the corporate scorecard, by the way, to raise them to meet the government target of 50% by 2025. Following the conclusion of the working group, Cabinet agreed in November 2020 to move, within 18 months, to introduce a weekly food waste collection alongside weekly dry recycling and fortnightly residual and garden waste. So that was agreed to be in place by May last year. That decision was reiterated by Cabinet in January 2022 as part of the longer-term waste, I quote, as part of the longer-term waste strategy, savings will also be realised by moving to fortnightly collection for residual waste as agreed by Cabinet in November 2020. There doesn't appear to have been any other report to Cabinet on the refuse service, although at Council in July 22, Councillor Jeffreys announced another review into the refuse service and said the changes previously agreed would be delayed until September this year. And then earlier this year, Cabinet agreed to launch the 3rd review of the waste service. Madam Mayor, in view of the time, I will cut it short. Frankly, residents have had enough. They just want their bins emptied on a regular basis on the day that they're promised that it will be done. So Cabinet needs to get a grip, it needs to make a decision and stick to it and just make sure that we get our bins emptied.
Councillor Morris-Cook, I believe you are seconding Councillor Kent's motion. Would you like to speak, or would you like to reserve your right to speak to the end?
I'd like to speak, Madam Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you.
There is an emerging theme in these reports: Conservative failure. Failure to get to grips with the council finances, failure to take scrutiny seriously, and failure of the waste collection. This isn't just about a few missed bins, it's the fundamental lack of understanding of a basic council service and then to deliver it efficiently. I was pleased to see the portfolio holder has finally done something sensible, listened and agreed to alternative recycling and garden waste collections. Not perfect, nor was it rocket science, but it does reflect the council's new reality and the pain this Conservative bankruptcy has set to inflict on residents. Somebody, not as kind as I, might be asking why this took so long. However, as the new chair of the Environment Scrutiny, I welcome this service change. I put the portfolio holder on notice that while we will engage with him openly and with respect, we will fulfil our scrutiny function without fear or favour, and we expect to be taken seriously and listened to in return. There'll be no more cheerleading because we all want to see a lasting improvements for our communities. To achieve this, there must be real engagement with our frontline staff and an end to unproductive confrontationalism that has symbolised the Tory stewardship of this service so far. To conclude,
Councillor Jeffreys, please give Councillor Cook the courtesy of hearing her speak.
To conclude,
Continue.
We await with interest the latest edition of the Waste Plan, Improvement Plan or Waste Strategy. Will it be third time lucky or 3 strikes and you are out?
Thank you, Councillor. I'm now going to open up to questions, but I believe Councillor Spillman was first to raise his hand. And can I just say, councillors, when we're going to debate, if you could put your hands up a little higher so that we actually can make sure you speak. Thank you. Councillor Spillman.
Madam Mayor, I will definitely be supporting this motion. It's not just it's not just the opposition. All councillors are very angry about this. I was absolutely fuming about this, and I thank Dr. Dave Smith for his kind reply. What I will disagree with Councillor Morris-Cook is that it wasn't supposed to be a matter of the ongoing and overlaying financial problem that had led to where we got today. Because I sat in cabinet and I sat in meetings and I signed off a budget for a full bin service. Excuse me. And then I toddled off on Purda, and then I read it exactly the same time as you did, that what we voted for, what had been presented in a budget, wasn't actually going to happen. I mean, it's absolutely unbelievable. So I'm really pleased that Dr. Smith and Councillor Jeffreys, new leader of council, has come together and got things, back to some sense of sanity, because I was absolutely fuming about that. It was completely unacceptable, completely undemocratic, and just as I said, probably one too many times, completely incompetent.
Thank you. Councillor Byrne.
Thank you. It's about 4 years ago, we had that recycling group and I sat on it. And one of the main reasons I was there, because it was about recycling, but I sat on it because I was proud to say that we had a Rolls-Royce bin service. 4 years ago, very few complaints, and we did have the best around. And I don't know what's happened in 4 years, but it's gone down and down and down. But we can have a Rolls-Royce service because we've had it once. So it's not rocket science. You pick up bin, empty it. So it's just a no-brainer. Why can't we get it right? I'm going to support this motion, obviously.
Thank you. Councillor Muldowney.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I just want to make 2 brief points. First of all, I had requested through the Scrutiny Committee details of the previous 2 reviews, which I only learnt had happened through my questioning of Councillor Jeffreys at one of those meetings. I'm still yet to get any of those details. And the other point that I want to make is on behalf of all those in the borough that are on an assisted bin collection, because my long experience of all the ups and downs with the bin service is when the bin service is under pressure, it's this service that goes to the wall first. Now, these are the most vulnerable people in our community. They physically can't move their bins to the boundary of their properties in order to have it collected with the normal service, and through either disability or through ill health or some reason which flags them as very vulnerable. So I'd just like to highlight the plight of these residents. I mean, I've even had cases that I think I brought to council where one of our assisted bin collection residents didn't have their bin collected, but had next door neighbours' bins placed across their driveway so that they couldn't actually leave their house because they weren't able to move that bin in order to get their disability adapted car out, so they had to stay in all day and wait for their husband to come home before they could actually leave their property. So please, 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 can we keep these residents in mind? They've had a particularly harsh deal through all the ups and downs that we've experienced, and I'd really be grateful if we could take care of their needs first. You know, they need to be looked after. Thank you.
Before I ask for the next person to speak, Councillor Jeffreys, I'm reminded that it's about 3 minutes to 10, and as I had said earlier, I propose to go on for another 20 minutes to allow for the other motions, if that's okay with everybody. I know it's tiring, but I think it's important. Yes, you still agree? Thank you. Councillor Jeffreys.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. So the motion calls for the collection of 3 bins. That's what we're doing now. That's what we've exactly put in place. I do find it rather strange that Labour put forward this motion when only a few weeks ago I got an email from 2 senior Labour councillors calling for the complete suspension of brown bins, something that I wasn't prepared to do. That's why I worked with the officers to get the 3 bins in place. Also, the comments from the chairman of the ONS, I know she's new to the job, but I mean, I was there throughout the whole meeting. Not once did she ask a question. It was just a series of statements, of political statements. And some of the things that she said tonight are actually quite hurtful towards the staff, towards the bin crews, because over the last 6 months, we've worked incredibly hard to make sure that they're listened to and heard to. And some of the things, and I've said it before, some of the things that have improved have been as a result of those bin crews feeding back, being able to tell managers what the problems and issues...
Can you not chat, because it's difficult to listen?
What the problem and issues were, and as a result of that, we've now got routes that they're happy with, that they know where they're collecting, when they're collecting, and that it's working a lot better. So I'd just gently suggest to her, be careful when you're talking about the bin crews, because, you know, they take it to heart, they do a good job, and they really don't need councillors suggesting that somehow we're not valuing them, because we do. We very much value them.
Councillor Kemp, would you now like to sum up?
Madam Mayor, I don't think there's anything new has been added in debate, so there's no need to sum up.
Thank you. On the motion. Councillor Spate did put his hand up before Councillor... Are you going to both speak on the motion, or shall we just take it to the vote?
I'd like to speak, Madam Mayor, if you don't mind.
Okay.
Just to pick up on, to give a little praise, actually, to Councillor Jeffreys, and I think, as I was chair of Cleaner Greener last year, he did come and take a lot of flack from us, because we did scrutinise him quite heavily on the bins, and all of us in this chamber have all had complaints about the brown bin, I'm sure. More than one complaint, I would think. And as we're all residents, we all take the flack, and as members, we take even more flack. And I think most of our members on overview and scrutiny did ask an awful lot of questions of you. And I think we've got to give praise where praise is due sometimes. There's been multitude of problems with drivers, with trying to find drivers, with trying to get drivers, with the routes, with everything else. It's not an easy portfolio to have. And I think we've got to, you know, our bin men have been really good. And I can go back and remember when the bin men used to carry it on their back. So, you know, and they didn't moan then. They done their job and got on with it. But we've got so much stuff to deal with now where they can't get down roads because of parked cars, and we're trying to put yellow lines in to stop that. So I think we've sometimes got to give praise to the portfolio, who's obviously leader as well, and I think he has answered a lot of our questions, and we now have got back to a brown bin collection. So praise where praise is due sometimes. You know, we have to...
Councillor Redsall, thank you.
Thank you.
Councillor Spate.
Yes, thank you. I will try and just make a point and take up the invitation from Councillor Jeffries to share experience so that we learn as a council. And this draws on an incident that happened in my ward over the last week and a half, in that the blue recycling bins were not collected on the route that encompasses in the main Wharf Road. And they were just missed. And the reason why, I still don't know, but they were missed. A number of residents did use the reporting service to report that the bins had been missed. It was reported on social media that the bins had been missed, and it was reported by councillors that the bins had been missed. As you are well aware, I wear another hat, and I raised this issue wearing my journalism hat, and the answer came back from the council was the bins have been emptied. I have a written statement that says the bins have been emptied. I took the opportunity to walk the length of Walk Road, knocked at half a dozen doors, spoke to half a dozen residents, spoke to pedestrians walking by, looked at the bins that clearly had not been emptied. I was rather angry, and I spoke to the communications department and told them that unless the council responded immediately, there would be a story appearing in the media that the council was accusing residents, and I'm going to put it bluntly, of lying about the situation. Within 40 minutes, I got a phone call saying, oh, sorry, yes, we've just realised that the bins weren't emptied. We found out that it didn't happen, and there was a human error, and the fact that the round didn't complete its round wasn't logged. Now, it's happened, it's done, it's over and done with, and I'm pleased to say that the council sent a special blue bin crew out today and caught up on that delivery. So fair play to the people who acknowledged the mistake. The point that I'm trying to make is when we do the root and branch review, when Councillor Jeffries and his team and ONS and whatever look at this, when the teams within the department, we have to acknowledge that there are significant failures in the system as it sits. And it's okay, and it was said earlier on, report it, report it, report it. That's the message we keep telling our residents. Report it, report it, report it. If the reporting system doesn't work, that is a complete and utter waste of time. So I ask that when you do look at this again, you really look at the mechanics of the online reporting system, and also bear in mind, as a lady I met today, she's got no internet, she doesn't have a mobile phone, she had no idea. She'd put a call into Democratic Services for a councillor to go and visit her, and I visited her and I explained when the bin collection system worked, when the bins were going to be collected. She was a very happy lady at the end of it. Let's talk to our people, but let's listen to them as well.
Thank you. Councillor Kent, though I'd asked you before, as I've had two other members speak, would you like to sum up?
Madam Mayor, I wouldn't like to sum up, but can I just ask that when we take the vote, we do take it as a show of hands and actually count the vote, please?
Yes, I accept that. I'll now proceed to the vote. All those in favour of the motion, please raise your hands. Please can you keep them up so they're recorded. Councillor Pass, yeah. Thank you. Are there any abstentions? No, and no one against. That's brilliant. Thank you so much for the motion, Councillor Kent. Motion 2, Councillor Spate. Do you wish to propose and then speak to your motion as printed on page 167 of the agenda? You have 5 minutes to speak.
I won't take 5 minutes. You'll be pleased to hear. If it's allowed, I would submit the proposal as written. If I have to speak, I can quickly read it out. I'm not sure what the directive is if you prefer me to read it out. If not, I'm simply just going to ask if anybody cares to second this.
Councillor Spate, I would like you to read it out,
That's fine,
simply so
yeah,
it's a matter of recording it on the council
that's
tapes.
fine.
Thank
Fine.
you.
Okay. Residents get 9 or at best 10 opportunities a year to see their council in full action. Far too often, vital matters are not discussed because of the guillotine regulations which foreshorten debate and discussion. This has led in the past to political filibustering and spurious questions to ensure that matters are not discussed in public because of the time limitation. This is not democracy in action. For full meetings only, councillors and officers should be expected to give whatever time is necessary to discuss matters. This motion does not seek to remove the limits of time individual councillors get to speak, but to remove the guillotine on separate sections of the meeting. Henceforth, this council calls on Cabinet and/or the Constitution Working Group to review the Constitution of a matter of urgency and subsequently allow monthly full council meetings to run their full length without the need to invoke standing orders or an extension from the Mayor. I think that speaks for itself, and if anybody wishes to second it, that's fine.
Yes, you do have a seconder. It's Councillor Haldon, and do you wish to speak on the motion?
Yeah, thank you, Madam Mayor, and I welcome Councillor Spate bring this motion forward. This is something that we've been pursuing for the last 3 or so years, and you know, we have made some improvements. We have extended the existing guillotine. We've provided more time for questions and motions. Members now get 4 minutes rather than 3 minutes to speak. We moved portfolio reports to overview and scrutiny and out of the chamber, so people are not hemmed in by a single question, and they can be more forensic of their questioning to the cabinet member. So I think there are plenty of more ways we can go a little bit further. I would gently say that there are only certain ways in which you can pull the Constitution around to achieve a better level of democratic debate, because let's be quite frank, for those of us who have been in the chamber for a number of years now, we have all served with councillors who, after a 4-year term, were not entirely sure what their voice sounds like. And we've all known those councillors on all sides of the chamber. Certainly, I recall when I was the cabinet member for social care, during the pandemic, when I moved my annual report, I had 0 questions. 0. So I certainly support this motion. I think there are lots of ways in which I've said multiple times tonight that all members should become actively involved in trying to strengthen and broaden debate within the Constitution. But there are only certain ways in which just making a more elegant Constitution is going to work. It's incumbent on members to actually engage. And the final point I would like to raise, and it's something that officers have mentioned a few times in a bid to be helpful to members. Officers have frequently raised the issue of call-ins. Scrutiny can call things in. The call-in function is one that I'm not a fan of at all, and it's why we need, not just to make full council a better debating forum, as Councillor Spate has rightly said, but we need to make committee a better debating forum, because simply calling things in, not only do I believe is slightly antagonistic, but calling things in totally stops the arc of decision-making. So from the second that Cabinet make a decision, if scrutiny then call it in, that tender, that decision cannot be enacted until the call-in is resolved. That can take anywhere between 4 and 9 weeks. So I think that by hopefully coming to a position where we do get proper scrutiny reform and we do have these meetings that are more robust, more frequent, we will get into a position where we don't simply have that very blunt instrument of a call-in in order to ensure that democratic debate can properly take place. So I fully welcome this motion, and then it just becomes incumbent on all members to actively engage in that debate to ensure that we don't end up with a good constitution like a fancy car that never gets driven anywhere.
Thank you, Councillor Howden. Councillor Kent, you wish to speak about the motion.
Very briefly, Madam Mayor, I support the motion without reservation, but the motion calls for the Constitution Working Group or similar to examine this and come back with a method of making this work. Can I just ask that you, as chair of our meeting, carry on the precedent that you've set this evening, which is to allow unlimited time for questions, unlimited time for motions, to make sure we get through the business. Can you carry on in that vein until such a time as the review is completed and the changes are effected in the Constitution?
Councillor Kent, yes, I can give you my assurance of that. And obviously it's the first time I've trialled it, and I'm sure some of the officers weren't quite in agreement, but I felt it was important because we're going to have openness and transparency, at least while I'm mayor. Councillor Allen, would you like to speak?
Yes, please. Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'm sure that some members in the chamber tonight can remember when I had the pleasure of chairing PTR back in 2021. And I made it abundantly clear to members in that time that all members should remain whilst business is unfinished. And I've been a strong believer in that for a long, long time. And I honestly believe that we should all be here until business is finished. You know, no matter what time of the evening or of the night that may be. Okay, I know it's tiring, as you said, Madam Mayor, but we should be here until business is finished. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Allen. Though I may, in future, do a comfort break halfway through. It's all right for you, you can all go out, but I can't, so. Anyway, Councillor Spate, Councillor Piccolo, you wanted to speak, thank you.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Whilst I'm retired and not, this motion that we can carry on till 2 o'clock in the morning if necessary, concerns me for those that may have got up at 5:30 in the morning to go to work. There needs to be a sensible limit to the length that the meetings can go on. What would help is, as we've noticed tonight, some of the questions that have come here for cabinet members and everything, in actual fact, could have been asked to the department directly. You know, sometimes questions get answered here because they get seen or reported in the press, or they're seen on a live stream. So I think we as members can moderate and control the length of the meetings so that we can cover the important stuff if we try to endeavour to make sure that we don't, for want of a better word, showboat by bringing questions in or making saying that in actual fact is just to, well, as I say, showboat to a certain extent. Totally agree, important issues and important questions should be asked, and to make sure that the meetings in the future finish at an acceptable time but have covered everything, we need to seriously look at the types of questions that are coming forward.
Thank you, Councillor Piccolo, and I understand your concerns, and I will be saying to members that though I will let the meeting go on so we get all the answers, I would like them to be a little bit briefer in their answers and questions and not reiterating something they'd already said. Councillor Spate, up to you to sum up.
Yeah, I would happily sum up, and as I offered a small bouquet earlier on to Councillor Jeffries in common with Councillor Kent, may I commend yourself and offer you a rather large bouquet for the precedent you hopefully set this evening, which perhaps would offset this motion anyway. I very much admire the way you've managed this meeting this evening. So I'll say no more than say I would like to propose this motion and ask for your support.
Thank you. I'll now proceed to the vote. All those in favour? I think we're all in agreement. Any abstentions? Anyone against? No? Okay, the motion has been passed. Thank you for your motion, Councillor. Item 19, motion 3, Councillor Kent. Do you wish to propose and speak to your motion as printed on page 169 of the agenda? You have 5 minutes to speak.
Madam Mayor, Council welcomes the release of the Best Value Inspection Report, endorses its recommendations and resolves to move to all-out elections from May 2024. And I have to start by admitting, along with Councillor Snell and others, that in the past I have been a supporter of election by thirds. For me, it's always been a finely balanced decision, but giving most voters the opportunity to have their say on their local council 3 years out of 4, maximising engagement with residents, keeping the administration on their toes and reducing the chances of dramatic swings in political makeup has won the day for me against the arguments that elections create a distraction that is unhelpful to the smooth running of the council, lead to short-termism and encourage members to duck difficult decisions. But given the catastrophic failure of the council finances and the very clear findings of the Best Value Inspection Report, it is clear that we must move to all-out elections, and we should do that as quickly as possible. It's no surprise that the leader of the council wants to stall and push the all-out elections into the long grass, but it is important that we don't allow that to happen. The BVI report says, we have heard consistently that work to bring member attention to the big strategic issues is only possible for a few months each year as they quickly go back into election mode for the following year. We have to avoid that being repeated as quickly as possible. Frankly, we need to get on with delivering the improvement and recovery plan as quickly as we can and without the distraction of having 2 sets of elections within the next 2 years. There are also costs associated with holding elections that we will incur twice if we delay moving to all-out elections. And finally, residents deserve to have their say on the appalling events of this council as quickly as possible. I therefore urge members to do the right thing and agree, in principle, to hold all-out elections from next year.
Thank you, Councillor Kent. Councillor Spillman, were you going to second this motion? No, you wanted to speak about it? Right. Is there a seconder to this motion? Oh, God, I'll take Councillor Kieran. Councillor Kieran, would you like to speak now or do you want to be at the end?
I reserve my right, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. Is anyone else wanting to speak on this motion? As it stands, Councillor Byrne. Sorry, Councillor Spillman. Well, you'll still finish your tea, aren't you?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I am...
Councillor Spillman, apparently I've done this wrong because I have to go to the amendment before I allow you, so you're going to have to sit down. Yeah, carry on eating. Yeah, I've received an amendment to this motion from Councillor Jeffries, and this has been tabled. Is this amendment seconded? Councillor Cockshaw, would you like to speak to your...
I reserve my right, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. What was your amendment, Councillor? Can you actually read it out so we can record it? Thank you.
Yes, of course, Madam Mayor. Council welcomes the release of the Best Value Inspection Report and endorses its recommendations and resolves to request that the independent boundary review be sped up to allow for all-out elections as soon as possible.
Thank you. Councillor Cockshaw, you're going to second it and you're going to reserve your right. Councillor Jeffries.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I totally endorse what the BVI says. We do need all-out elections. One of the biggest issues that we had here was the short-termism on both sides, no long-term planning. But what I don't want to see is that the public purse has to carry out and pay for election after election after election. Not only does it cost the public purse money, but it just flies in the face of what the BVI says. There's no stable administration running the council with a 4-year plan. So we have to have a boundary review. Let's get the boundary review completed as quickly as possible, and then we go out for all-out elections.
Does any member wish to comment on the amended or substantive motion? Councillor Spate. Councillor Spillman.
Thank you very much, Tim. So, I think it's probably common knowledge, it is amongst this group anyway, and amongst former colleagues, that I genuinely love elections. I love every minute of it. At the moment they end, I'm depressed, because I have to wait another year for another election. It's just, that's how I feel about them. But even, I mean, whatever we decide tonight and whatever we decide going forward, the current offering or potential offering is not acceptable. We're going to have, as it stands at the moment, we're going to have thirds, then all-outs, and then we could have all-outs the next year with boundary reviews. Now, given the, I mean, I like Councillor Kent, was a previous, I preferred thirds, but I understand the importance of this council in its particularly perilous state having a secure administration going forward. Now, one of my concerns about that, about Councillor Kent's idea, and I do worry that there's a slight amount of bravado and headline grabbing in his proposal, rather than, you know, any real grasp on the practicalities, even from his own side. I mean, I don't know whether he's confident that he can get 49 candidates together who all actually want to be elected, because I don't think he will. I think he'll have lots of gaps, and I think half the people that he puts forward will be desperate to lose rather than get elected. So, I mean, that is a concern to me. But what we need to do is we need to bring this my preference is for, if we could bring boundary reviews to 2024 and get the whole thing done in one shebang, that's fine with me. But that would be brilliant. But I don't think that's going to be possible. And so my real concern is that we end up with this triple hit of elections. And that, I mean, the amount of short-termism that we're going to see in policy making is going to be frightening. If we end up with 2 years with 49 councillors all up for election in a row, it's going to be awful. And we're going to end up, you know, any sort of, you know, sense of recovery, it'll just be for the birds. So we do need to get together and find a sensible resolution. I'm just not sure that Councillor Kent genuinely believes that he can put together the sort of slate by next year, the quality of slate by next year that is going to be required to get a strong enough council to get this recovery on the road.
Right. Thank you, Councillor Spillman. I'm very aware that the extension I gave before has now run out, or perhaps not. So is it possible someone could say that we're going to carry on, because I'd said 20 minutes? So do you propose another, say, 20 minutes?
Madam Mayor, with respect, you said it, we didn't vote on it. So I will move that we extend standing orders to the close of business.
Thank you, Councillor Kent. Thank you. And I'm sorry about that. Councillor Byrne.
For me, it's a no-brainer. We're going to start saving money from as early as next May. The only people who are going to vote against this are the ones that are scared to fight the election earlier. I'm in favour of...
Sorry, Councillor, because you wasn't speaking into the mic. We didn't really hear what your last comment was.
I just said the only people that are going to vote against this are the ones who are scared to go into the 24 election and fight it.
Thank you. Councillor Quatchall.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I think it's the underlining point of actually what Councillor Spillman has said. that the practicalities of this, by all means, all-out elections is the favour of every local authority now across the country. The government wants authorities to move away from thirds because it provides stability. It's something that was proven in the BVI. And as a direction, if we don't get, we've gone through the consultation tomorrow, the Minister is going to make the direction that we moved on the plans of all-outs in 25 with thirds next year. But my worry is moving to all-outs as early as next year, we are due a boundary review. West Thurrock and South Stifford, that ward is huge now. Let's be quite frank. The numbers do not match. But it's uneven. It's 20 odd years since we've had the last boundary review. We are going to be going into this on the expectation we do all outs next year, and very well within 2 years, again, we could have another all out. We're not going to be providing the stability for the recovery of the council. I think it's much better to make sure we have all our ducks in a row. We look at, can we get this boundary review sped up as soon as possible? Because it makes far much more sense to ensure we're saving residents' own money, because we could be running 3 elections in a row, if on the worst case scenario. Definitely not in the interest of residents. I would like to say, when the BVI talks about the calibre of councillor, it actually states that the calibre of councillors isn't good enough sometimes, and the stock is poor. What person could we attract into this chamber if we just say, are we going to say...
Councillor Worrell, please. Cox shall continue.
What are we going to say to the calibre of councillors? That's my worry, and I'm not pointing fingers on any side, it's all sides. And what person, if you want to say, wants to get involved into local democracy, knowing that there could be election after election after election? There's no stability in it. And that's why I much favour the idea of making sure our boundary review is done first before we can move to the motion of all-out elections.
Councillor Spate.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'm a little confused, and clearly the benches opposite know something that I can't seem to find any information about, in that I've looked on the Boundary Commission's website and scoured it and can find no trace of any pending review for Thurrock. There is a parliamentary review mooted. Now, I may be missing something, it may not be there, but it's certainly not on the map that I looked at this evening, which has got all the pending boundary reviews for municipal metropolitan councils. Thurrock's not on there. However, I just put that out there. But I think this council needs a reset, and I welcome the motion calling for change, and I believe it has to come sooner rather than later. In my view, to wait till 2025 is ridiculous. To my mind, it is unconscionable to make a proposition even regarding the election in 2005, given what we've read in the BVI. Thurrock residents deserve honest and forthright representation in this chamber that they feel they have a connection with. At the moment, I don't think they do, and they deserve the right to a policy check. I've been a councillor since early May, and I regard that honour as a privilege, but I believe it's more important to give the people another say about the whole council than me to hang on to that post, much as I'm enjoying every second of it. If I am good enough and I earn their respect, then I am more than happy to submit myself to their judgment, and it's more important that they have the opportunity to pass judgment on this council. And I think that should apply to every member there. If the council deems it acceptable to wait until an all-out election in May 2025, subject to a possible boundary commission, then so be it. And in the meantime, I'll continue to serve and do my best. But the BVI are quite clear. What we've got is not good enough. It isn't working, and they want to see change. I see little or no point in waiting for that change. Let's bring it in. Let's save the money rather than having 2 elections, one in 24 and one in 25.
Councillor Redsall.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'm going with the amendment, but I do agree that we do need all out. We need 4 yearly elections because officers and members need continuity. Officers don't get that continuity if they're going to lose a portfolio the following year and they've just learnt to work with him or her. So I think the continuity is needed. I don't think all out next year is the right way to go. It could mean that we have an election after that, and then we have another election after that, and then we have parliamentary elections in between all that. So I don't think our residents want to keep And it's not fair to us if we're trying to run a council and trying to get through what we've got now and keep fighting an election, because we keep going out there, I like elections, like Luke. I enjoy talking to people and getting out there and speaking to them, but I think it's not fair on a lot of residents that we have to keep, and members to keep fighting an election every year. You know, it takes a lot out. We try and do the work within the council, and we're also trying to fight an election. So I've got to go with the amendment, but I do agree that we need 4 yearly elections. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Edsel. Councillor Muldowney.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. The BVI report recommends that the Council should move to all-out elections next year. We all agreed tonight to support the recommendations in that report. I didn't hear anybody give any caveats to that, so I'm a bit puzzled as why the caveats are coming now. I can understand why some on the benches opposite will not welcome all-out elections next year, but we need to look at the situation that we're in. We would realise a substantial cost saving at a time when the Council is facing the need to make around 20 million plus savings, both in this year and next year. The BVI report highlights that this will help to provide the opportunity to enhance the Commissioner's work, to embed new ways of working in a fit-for-purpose operating environment, which does not presently exist. And it would also help to address the short-term political thinking which got us into this mess in the first place. More importantly, Thurrock residents who've already been through a round of local elections this year, which showed a massive swing from the Conservatives, cannot understand why the Conservatives they voted so decisively against are still in power. Although the commissioners have power from the government to hire and fire paid staff, and we've seen 2 resignations from those most culpable for this situation from the officer group, and I'm sure others will follow, it has become clear that the politicians who are most responsible for this mess are not prepared to do the decent thing and step down and go to the ballot box. The only way for residents to rid themselves of the people that have saddled them, their children and their grandchildren with a debt that they will be paying off for decades is to vote them out. Thurrock residents deserve the right to vote in all-out elections as soon as possible, and for these reasons I will be voting in favour of the motion set forward by John Kent. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Watson.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Actually, the BVI report and recommendation 6 does say to make arrangements by 31st of July 2023. I know that was then a letter turned up to say July 2025. The recommendations do actually say 2023. Councillor Spillman, we're already on thirds, and Councillor Redseal, we have elections 1 year after next year after next year. For me, it's no different of going next year and the next year and the next year. The only difference is it's a full out 49. You may not have a good enough slate. You haven't got a clue what slate we've got holding. But I don't...
Please, Councillor Watson, Councillor Spillman, do not talk across the chamber. Continue, Councillor Watson.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. We also do not know when the boundary review is coming, even though Mr. Mark Cockshaw keeps going about 2026. We don't know. It's not even listed to go yet to a boundary. Boundaries are happening all over the place, and we're in a timetable. We have not been told officially when we're going to go into here. So I don't understand where your problem is in the public purse, as you quietly put, because nobody worried about that for the last God knows how many years. But now we're worried about going for a full-out election next year. Personally, it's for continuity. It's to allow our improvement plan to actually work and deliver, regardless of what party. That is what is needed here. And we owe that to our residents who keeps calling it out for a 4-year and an all-out election. So whether we go next year or 25 or 26, or it might be a 27 and we've got a general election and we've got a PPC thing coming, commissioners one coming and everything else. For me, there's no different. So I will support the first motion. I really will, because I think we just do need an all-out election. And we just try our luck and let our residents be our judge, jury and executioners. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Watson. Councillor Worrell.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I want to go back to the beginning of the meeting when Councillor Snell said he'd been to some scrutiny meetings, and already people were beginning to be political and shutting down and ready for the next election. That is why we've got to go out. Right? We can't hook ourselves onto a boundary review that's down the road. Right? The residents give us a mandate to represent them. They were furious. We bumped into people that were trying to vote and they didn't have elections last year. They want their voice. The MP, Jackie Dole-Price, has said that she knows that the residents want change. So I don't know why yous are not up for the fight. I mean, to make that happen now. We need stability in here. And whatever side or some independents, we don't know what it looks like. I'm prepared to put myself up. If you are a good councillor in your ward, you shouldn't be frightened of what the residents are going to say. They will judge you from in this chamber and they will judge you from outside. We've got councillors that have only just got elected. You have got councillors that have just got elected. We're all in the same boat, but we've all got to get to the same place. We've got to get stability. I've spoke against all outs in the past, but the time is right, the time is now. Don't hook it on something down the never, never. You know, we need to do it now. I just don't know why you're trying to push it down the road when actually the right thing is to do what the residents have been calling for on social media, answering news reports. You know, they want, in our surgeries, walking down the streets, residents want their say and they haven't had it. So next May, you should do the right thing tonight and vote for this to be an election next year. So I hope that Councillor Ken and Councillor Jeffries, I hope that this is a requisition vote because I want the residents to know who's ready to go to all outs.
Thank you. I'm going to call on the last councillor. Sorry, Councillor Green, were you asking me something? No. Councillor Howden.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Madam Mayor, the tone of this debate has become depressingly churlish very quickly. There is a reason that you have mechanisms like a constitution working group, because you carefully consider proposals before you do something as radical as changing an entire election cycle. Can you imagine any other decision that you would so irresponsibly just put in a motion and decide we are going to make a massive governance change right here, right now? The reason you would consider things like, is there a boundary change coming? That's why you'd have a constitution working group to fully consider the implications. And frankly, the mask does slip somewhat when councillors opposite do stand up and say, well, people want an election so they can throw you out. That clearly belies the fact that you're not considering what is best for governing, you're considering what is best for your political fortunes at the time. And frankly, I do think 4-yearly elections are the right thing to do. I think it's a right governing tool. And in terms of having the Councillor Byrne mentioned, having the bravery to go to the ballot box, when I voted for 4-yearly elections, it was just after Theresa May had spectacularly lost us our majority in Parliament. We were about, I think, 12 points behind in the polls when we voted to call an all-in election. And the great irony is, we would have had that all-in election in 2019 and you would have beaten us. And you would have been in power for the last 4 years. So I'm quite comfortable in my own conscience that I voted for an all-in election when my party was substantially behind and when it was quite likely I would have lost my own seat. because I believe it's the right thing to do, because good governance has to begin at political stability, regardless of who wins the election. I certainly had the courage of my convictions then, and I think all members should very carefully consider how they vote, not based on partisan opportunity, but based on what is correct for the borough. I'd be quite happy to have this issue properly reviewed by the Constitution Working Group, so we have a paper published, so we can consider all the implications before we change our electoral arrangements or our governance arrangements. But I have, my record is quite clear, and it's the clear record of this side of the chamber. I don't mind going to the ballot box. I didn't mind when I voted for it 5 years ago, when we were going to go to the ballot box in a very difficult position. Admittedly, a less difficult position than my party's in now. But that is how you should correctly consider these issues. It should be a cerebral, detailed conversation discussing all the implications, not just a motion that is fledged off the back of current political animus. That serves a party of a day, that doesn't serve the overall governing position of the entire authority corporately.
Councillors, I can't hear myself think when you're all banging. I did say on both sides, no more banging. Councillor Johnson.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'll take that on board. No more banging. I think it's very disingenuous to say that the people of Thurrock didn't get their vote, because there's 3 people sitting on this front bench who went to the polls last May and they were voted back in. So it doesn't matter, you know. I think you said, please don't.
Councillor Worrell, stop talking across the
Councillor Worrell,
station.
you said to the leader you didn't believe one of his answers. You're not buying it. Well, quite frankly, I'm not buying this either, because one of the first things when I had the finance portfolio so long ago was to say, let's have 4-yearly elections. All of you voted against it. The only reason you're voting for it now is because your party has a lead in the polls. Let's be honest. If we're going to be open and honest, let's do it now.
Councillors, stop it. Behave. Right. Councillor Kieran, you wish to speak as seconder of the substantive motion.
Thank you, thank you, Madam Mayor. And I've listened carefully to the arguments for this, and the main arguments against Councillor Kent's motion seem to be waiting for a boundary review sometime in the future, and also the worry of not being able to put up 49 high-calibre candidates. And that's not really our problem if you are going to struggle to put a slate together. So what I would say is, try and attract good people, and they will want to stand. I do acknowledge previously supporting election in thirds, but I do believe that the scale of Thurrock's financial catastrophe is a significant material change. Residents do deserve a definitive say. We've all accepted that this BVI report is a fundamental document that's going to change our borough and our council forever. And now it's published. It wasn't published before the last election that we've just all fought. Now it's been published. Residents seen the report, and they will be asking themselves why, regardless of how they vote, it wouldn't have led to a change of administration if that's what they'd chosen. That's the issue here. Okay, you can say it's to do with opinion polls. The BVI report hasn't factored itself in the middle of a political cycle. It's landed with us because of the way you've run the council. Please remember that. So what I would say is, bring it on, bring it forward to 2024. It's no good kicking it into the long grass. We've agreed tonight that the long grass is good for the environment, but it's not good for democracy. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Councillor Burns, stop it. Councillor Jeffreys, as mover of the amendment, do you wish to have a right of reply? Councillor Jeffreys.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'm only going to reiterate what I said earlier, and that is the motion is calling for the Boundary Commission to actually carry out the boundary review so that we don't get into a situation where we have all thirds next year, 25 all outs, and then the boundary review come along and say, yep, you've got to have all outs again. That's what this motion is calling for. So we're asking the Boundary Commission carry out the review and then go for all outs in 2025. That way, people get one election and get a council for 4 years, giving you stability, which is what the BVI is asking for. And just one question, several councillors opposite said that the BVI is calling for all-out elections next year. It's not. It's asking us to get in place to have all-out elections in 2025.
Thank you. Councillor Kent, do you wish to I expect you do, wish to sum up, yes? Thank you.
Yeah, I'm in the uncomfortable position of agreeing with something that Councillor Howden said, and that is that bait has at times got a little bit tetchy, and I kind of regret that. Although I am kind of, when I listen to some of what I've heard from the Conservative group, I'm put in mind of St Augustine. Oh, master, make me chaste and celibate, but not yet. Madam Mayor, the truth is that when
I'm sorry, Councillor. What was that? I missed. I'm sorry. Sorry, you're all laughing. I didn't hear.
Madam Mayor, I'll ask Brian to explain it to you later. The fact is, when I read Councillor Jeffrey's amendment, it was the first that I'd heard that there was a boundary review in the offing or pending. So I did the same as Councillor Spate, and I looked on the website, and there is no pending review here for Thurrock. And the reality is, it could come next year, it could come the year after, it could come the year after, it could come the year after that. We need, having all said that we agree with all the recommendations of the Best Value Inspection Report, we need to agree with Recommendation 6. Recommendation 6 doesn't mention a boundary review. And frankly, if we really accept the recommendations, if we really accept every single one of them, then we accept them without caveat. And we can't say we will move to those all-out elections, but only once we've had a boundary review. We need to accept it as it is. Madam Mayor, I will stop there, but I would like a requisition vote on this if I could see 5 members standing.
1, 2, 3, 4. Yes, you can have one. Sorry, I wasn't being rude. I know you have to have so many stand up to have a requisition vote. We'll now go to the vote on the amendment. Are members in agreement with the amendment?
Sorry, point of order, Madam Mayor. I'm not quite clear what we're doing with the requisition vote. We did change the Constitution in May of last year. Every vote that's taken place in the chamber is meant to be ticked off on a sheet. So every single vote should be, by its very nature, a recorded vote now. That went through full council in May of last year.
Hang on a moment. I'm just going to ask for advice on this one. Right, what we're going to do is alphabetically call out each member, and you're going to put your mics on and you're going to say how you're going to vote. Now, do you all understand what you're actually, hang on a minute. Are you all understanding what you are voting for? The amendment, okay? Yes. The amendment, I didn't want you all voting for the wrong thing. The amendment. Ready? If you all be quiet, please, and then Democratic Services.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. So this is for the amendment. Councillor Abbas.
For.
Councillor Allen.
Against.
Councillor Anderson.
For.
Councillor Deborah Arnold.
For.
Councillor Paul Arnold.
For.
Councillor Byrne. Councillor Carter.
For.
Councillor Cecil. Councillor Chukwa.
Against.
Thank you. Councillor Chukwa. Councillor Collins.
For.
Councillor Cockshall.
For.
Councillor Duffin.
For.
Councillor Fish.
Against.
Councillor Green.
Against.
Councillor Howden. Councillor Hartstein.
Against.
Councillor Hooper.
Against.
Councillor Hurrell.
Against.
Councillor Jeffries.
For.
Councillor Johnson.
For.
Councillor Kelly.
For.
Councillor Cathy Kent.
Against.
Councillor John Kent.
Against.
Councillor Kerrin.
Against.
Councillor Lydiard.
Against.
Councillor Little.
For.
Councillor Maney.
For.
Councillor Ben Maney. Councillor Jackie Maney.
For.
Councillor Manwa.
Against.
Councillor Massey.
Against.
Councillor Morris Cook.
Against.
Councillor Maldowney.
Against.
Councillor Onanaji.
For.
Councillor Panjala.
Against.
Councillor Pearce. Councillor Piccolo.
For.
Councillor Raper. Councillor Redsell. Councillor Rigby.
For.
Councillor Salmons.
For.
Councillor Shinnock.
Against.
Councillor Snell.
For.
Councillor Spate.
Against.
Councillor Spillman.
For.
Councillor Tandy.
For.
Councillor Watson.
Against.
And Councillor Worrell.
Against. Thank you, councillors. Just one point while they're counting up. Councillor Byrne, Councillor Howden, and there was one councillor over here. I did say use your mics because so you think your voice is loud enough, we do need it for the tape. Thank you.
Against.
Councillor Shush. Right, the results are the amendment is carried and it's 24 votes to 23 votes. Hang on a minute, hang on. Sorry, can you let Democratic Service, unless you want the job as being democratic, let them sort it out. Hang on. Right, councillors. There's Councillor Worrell. Right, all of you. There are 47 of you all in the room, and the vote was 24 for, 23 against. So the amendment is carried. Right? We're all in agreement. So that now becomes a substantive motion. So now what I'm going to do. Right. Sorry about this. I'm going to hand over to the CEO because I think he'll explain it better than I. But at the moment, the 24-23.
I just want to clarify, are members happy that the requisition vote stands as on the now amended substantive motion, or do you want a vote again?
No, thank you. We would like to vote again because we would like to support the substantive motion because we think that setting the principle of all-out elections is important.
Okay, Democratic Services, off you go. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Mayor.
And use your mics, please.
Just on a point there, can we just do the second vote en masse unless there's a desperate need for it to be recorded since everyone seems to be in favour?
Hang on. Well, let's go through and do it as a requisition. Okay? Off you go.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Councillor Abbas.
For.
Councillor Allen. Councillor Allen.
Yeah, I'm going against.
Councillor Anderson.
For.
Councillor Deborah Arnold.
For.
Councillor Paul Arnold.
For.
Councillor Byrne.
Against.
Councillor Carter.
For.
Councillor Cecil. Councillor Cecil.
For.
Councillor Chukwa.
For.
Councillor Collins.
For.
Councillor Cockshall.
For.
Councillor Duffin.
For.
Councillor Fish.
For.
Councillor Green.
For.
Councillor Howden.
For.
Councillor Hartstein.
For.
Councillor Hooper.
For.
Councillor Hurrell.
For.
Councillor Jeffries.
For.
Councillor Johnson.
For.
Councillor Kelly.
For.
Councillor Cathy Kent.
For.
Councillor John Kent.
For.
Councillor Kerrin.
For.
Councillor Lydiard.
For.
Councillor Little. Councillor Little.
For.
Councillor Ben Maney.
For.
Councillor Jackie Maney.
For.
Councillor Manoir.
For.
Councillor Massey.
Abstain.
Councillor Morris Cook.
For.
Councillor Maldowney.
For.
Councillor Onanaji.
For.
Councillor Panjala.
For.
Councillor Pearce.
For.
Councillor Piccolo.
For.
Councillor Raper.
For.
Councillor Redsell.
For.
Councillor Rigby.
For.
Councillor Salmons.
For.
Councillor Shinnock.
For.
Councillor Snell.
For.
Councillor Spate.
Against.
Councillor Spillman.
For.
Councillor Tandy.
For.
Councillor Watson.
For.
And Councillor Worrell.
For.
Councillors, the meeting hasn't ended yet, so if you can just wait, please.
43 for, 3 against and 1 abstention.
Right, the vote's in. It's 43 for, 3 against, and 1 abstention. Thank you. Right, that concludes business of the meeting this evening. I now declare the meeting closed at 10:59, but bearing it, hang on, Councillor Spillman. No, seriously, if we're going to do this right, we're going to do it right. If you could wait. So I do declare it closed, but considering Brian's been at Costco's and his sandwiches have probably gone curly, I would appreciate you all join us in the parlour for a sandwich afterwards. Thank you.